Chapter 1915. After entering the secret chamber, Ji Tianqing passed through the secret passage and entered the Star Divine Furnace. The raging Star Divine Fire was more powerful than it had been a few days ago. The surging waves of silver fire swept over with terrifying power. Ji Tianqing stood at the edge of the sea of fire and looked at Qian Yu and the Black Dragon, observing their reactions. The Black Dragon was calmer. A layer of hazy black light surrounded its body, protecting it. It did not rush into the sea of fire. Instead, it stood at the edge of the sea of fire, blocking the flames around it. Even though the flames were so powerful that they could break through its protective black light and leave scars on its body, it was still able to endure it. It gritted its teeth and endured the pain, not letting out any cries of pain or screams. Qian Yu was very lively. Relying on the protection of the magic treasure, it was wrapped in a layer of brilliant silver light and entered the sea of fire. The raging waves of fire kept rushing over, but they were all blocked by the silver light and could not hurt it. The ice-blue necklace had a diamond-shaped purple pendant hanging from it, emitting dense starlight. Not only was it protecting Qian Yu, but it was also quickly absorbing the power of the Star Divine Fire. Ji Tianqing carefully observed for a moment. He could vaguely see that the mysterious necklace was also a divine weapon. After all, warriors below the martial god realm all cultivated by absorbing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Even martial saints were no exception. Only after reaching the martial god realm could one absorb the power of the stars to become stronger. Therefore, he set up a large array on the ground and placed Qian Yu in it. He taught Qian Yu the astral body refining art so that it could use the power of the mysterious necklace to absorb the Star Divine Fire to refine its body. At first, Qian Yu did not understand the mysteries of the astral body refining art. It rashly came into contact with the Star Divine Fire and was burned black and blue all over, screaming in pain. After Ji Tianqing's guidance, it gradually grasped the trick. After a few hours, it could finally control the size of the Star Divine Fire and its pain was greatly reduced. Half a day later, it could cultivate independently. Under the refinement of the Star Divine Fire, it gradually grew and became stronger in pain. Ji Tianqing stopped worrying about it and began to think of a solution for the Black Dragon. Little Black Dragon, when you underwent your tribulation, it was the primordial divine tribulation. It has something to do with the ancient dragon crystal you devoured, as well as your bloodline. He stood in front of the Black Dragon and said thoughtfully, when we were in the profound sky continent, we even went to the Eastern Sea to investigate your background. Facts have proven that you're not the East Sea Dragon at all, but the Upper Realms Dragon God. In my memories, all the dragons in the universe originated from the ancient dragon realm. Therefore, the answer to your origins will definitely be found in the dragon realm. The Black Dragon listened attentively, looked up at him and asked, Old Ji, what kind of place is the dragon realm? You don't seem unfamiliar with that place. Of course. Ji Tianqing nodded, revealing a look of reminiscence as he explained, the dragon realm is an ancient and powerful world. It is the origin of all dragons. In the future, when we leave this world, we may go to the dragon realm. At that time, we may be able to solve the mystery of your origins. The Black Dragon nodded as if it understood. After thinking for a while, it said in a low muffled voice, Old Ji, actually, my origins are not important, as long as I can follow you. Ji Tianqing just smiled and changed the topic. Qian Yu has the protection of a divine weapon, so she can cultivate in the Star Divine Furnace, but you can't do so. I have the scripture of the Heavenly Dragon, which is the divine scripture of the dragon realm. It contains many secret techniques and divine skills of the dragon race. The secret technique I taught the glazed fire dragon originated from the scripture of the Heavenly Dragon. Instead of cultivating the star body refinement art, you might as well cultivate the secret techniques of the dragon race. It will help you the most. The Black Dragon's eyes suddenly lit up, revealing a look of expectation. Old Ji, you want to teach me the secret techniques of the dragon race? Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded, "Of course. I will first teach you the star transformation art, which is the basic technique of the scripture of the heavenly dragon. As long as you cultivate this star transformation art, you will be able to break free from the shackles of heaven and earth spiritual qi and absorb the endless power of the stars. When you cultivate the star transformation art to a high level and reach the martial sage realm, I will teach you the entire scripture of the heavenly dragon." The black dragon hurriedly nodded in agreement, feeling very excited. It was very clear that Ji Tianqing understood the divine dragon clan the most and would definitely be able to help it greatly improve its strength in the shortest time possible. Then, Ji Tianqing used his qi to send out a ball of golden light, which slowly flew toward the black dragon's head. The ball of golden light entered its mind, turning into a torrent of information, and merged into its memory. It hurriedly flew to the edge of the star divine furnace, coiled its body, and merged with the information in its sleep. Ji Tianqing watched from the side, in case anything happened to it. When it encountered something it did not understand or had doubts about, Ji Tianqing would be able to resolve them in time. A day later, the black dragon finally understood the star transformation art's incantation and remembered it in its soul, never forgetting it. Then, it began to cultivate the star transformation art, absorbing wisps of star divine fire to refine its dragon body and convert them into magical power. In the beginning, its movements were slightly clumsy, and its body was covered in wounds from the star divine fire, bleeding profusely. After Ji Tianqing's guidance and teaching, it gradually grasped the trick. Half a day later, it was able to cultivate normally and there were no major problems. Only then did Ji Tianqing feel relieved and left the star divine furnace alone. Returning to the secret chamber, he also began to cultivate in seclusion. This time, his seclusion only lasted for 8 days and 8 nights. He had consumed a large amount of spirit stones, elixirs, and other resources, and his strength had greatly improved. On the night of the 9th day, he suddenly had a premonition. He had a premonition that his 4th heavenly tribulation would arrive soon. At this moment, Huanglong Daoist's voice suddenly sounded from outside the secret chamber. "Master, I have an important matter to discuss with you." Huanglong Daoist's tone was low, obviously containing a hint of anxiety. Moreover, Ji Tianqing was cultivating in seclusion. If there was no important matter, Huanglong would not dare to disturb him. Ji Tianqing had no choice but to end his cultivation. He waved his hand and released a golden light, opening the door of the secret chamber. Huanglong Daoist hurriedly passed through the door and quickly entered the secret chamber. He cupped his hands and reported, "Master, something happened in the West River Valley." Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and asked in a low voice, "What happened? Tell me in detail." Huanglong Daoist said with a serious expression, "The West River Valley is not far from Tianzhu Mountain, only about 100,000 miles away. That area is rich in resources, and there are 5 cities and dozens of villages and villages. 6 nights ago, one of the cities was attacked, and tens of thousands of civilians were killed or injured. Then, on the 2nd night, another city was attacked, and 70,000 to 80,000 civilians were killed." Chapter 1916. Upon hearing the news reported by Huanglong Daoist, Ji Tianqing's face immediately turned gloomy. His first reaction was that it was most likely done by the demon race experts. Only the demon race would be so cruel, massacring cities at the drop of a hat. Massacring tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of people in one night. What's more, Ji Ku had previously warned him that a large number of demon race experts had entered the Tianzhu Mountains. Those demon race experts would create disasters and disasters, destroying the stability of the Tianzhu Mountains. After Huanglong Daoist finished reporting, Ji Tianqing asked in a deep voice, "Several cities were attacked, and more than a dozen villages and tribes were massacred. Even the elders and experts of the Shiha sect went missing. Such a bloody and cruel massacre was most likely done by the demon race experts." "Huanglong, have you personally investigated? Huanglong Daoist nodded and explained, just the day before yesterday, I personally led a team of guards to check the situation. But after I arrived at the Shiha Valley, I waited for a day and 2 nights, but I couldn't find the culprit. The other party didn't appear again. I suspect that there are spies of the other party hiding in the cities of the Shiha Valley. They must have heard the news, so they hid and didn't appear. But those few cities were in a panic, and I couldn't find the other party's spies. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, that's right, this is very likely. The demon race has several secret techniques that can turn humans into their puppets, or take over their bodies to disguise as humans. Even if it's you, without a target, it's very difficult to discover their disguise. Huanglong Daoist frowned and said with a worried face, Master, I just left yesterday, and another city was attacked last night. The Shiha sect was helpless, and the Shiha sect master could only send a message to ask for our sect's support. About this matter, what do you think I should do? Ji Tianqing said in a serious tone, whether it's you or the people of the Shiha sect, you don't know enough about the demon race, nor do you have any experience in dealing with the demon race. If I want to resolve the crisis in the West River Valley, I'll have to go there personally. Hearing this, Huanglong Daoist hurriedly waved his hand and dissuaded him, No. Master, you said before that the demon race will definitely create crises and disasters to destroy the stability of the world. Their ultimate goal is to deal with you. This disciple suspects that the fiend race did this in order to lure you to Shiha Valley. Therefore, you must not go there personally. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, if I don't go there myself, who can resolve this crisis and find the culprit? This. Huanglong Daoist was suddenly speechless. He said tentatively, even if you want to go in person, this disciple must follow and protect you. Ji Tianqing frowned again and rejected him decisively. If you follow me to the West River Valley, who will guard Tianzhu Mountain? Huanglong Daoist pondered for a moment before he mustered up his courage and said, Master, the situation at Tianzhu Mountain is still rather stable. It won't be a problem for us to rush back after we resolve the crisis at West River Valley. Anyway, West River Valley is not far from our sect. Even if something unexpected happens, we can rush back within a day. Moreover, the 2 heavenly arrays and the heavenly array have been activated. Our sect is impregnable. There shouldn't be any accidents. In short, this disciple must not let you take the risk alone. If you want to leave Tianzhu Mountain, this disciple must protect you. Huanglong Daoist's attitude was very firm. No matter how Ji Tianqing tried to persuade him, it was useless. In his heart, the 1,000 years of foundation of Tianzhu Mountain was far less important than Ji Tianqing's safety. He would rather sacrifice his own life than let Ji Tianqing fall into a life and death crisis. Ji Tianqing could not persuade him and could only agree. Alright, since you want to follow me, then let's go together. Huanglong Daoist heaved a sigh of relief and smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Therefore, Huanglong Daoist left the secret room and went to arrange tasks for the few elders. He solemnly instructed them. About half an hour later, Ji Tianqing walked out of Tianzhu Palace and came to the training hall. Huanglong Daoist had also made the necessary arrangements. He left Tianzhu Mountain with him and flew towards West River Valley. To be safe, Ji Tianqing did not take the Sword of Burial of Heaven with him. He even instructed it to guard Tianzhu Mountain. It was now the middle of the night. In the dark sky, there were sparse stars scattered around, shining brightly. A crescent moon hung in the sky, sprinkling down cold moonlight. Ji Tianqing and Huanglong hurried on with their journey. They flew across the night sky as fast as lightning and rushed towards West River Valley at their fastest speed. With their speed, it only took them half a day to cover a distance of 100,000 miles. Midnight was the darkest moment before dawn. The stars and moon had already dimmed. Tianzhu Mountain was silent. A tall and sturdy figure quietly flew out from one of the palaces and silently flew down the mountain. This figure was clearly a tall and sturdy man. He wore a black robe and a black iron mask, revealing only a pair of eyes and white eyebrows. It was a pair of cold eyes. They were filled with the marks of time, but they contained sufficient calmness and wisdom. He turned into a hazy black shadow and passed through the night sky like a breeze. He very familiarly passed through the layers of palaces and array formations. 100 breaths later, he arrived at the edge of Tianzhu Mountain. In front of him was a cliff. In front of him was a pitch-black night sky that seemed to be empty. However, the shield formed by the heavenly dome array was right in front of him. He hurriedly took out a token from his interspatial ring and held it in his palm. The token emitted a faint golden light that contained a special power. Swoosh! He leaped towards the cliff and passed through the invisible shield without any delay. He flew down Tianzhu Mountain. After 15 minutes, he left Tianzhu Mountain and landed in a valley 800 miles away. In the damp and gloomy valley, it was as dark as ink and silent. After the black-robed man entered the valley, he stood on a large rock at the bottom of the valley. He looked around coldly before slowly extending his right palm. His index and middle fingers lit up with a golden light. He waved his hand 3 times at a moderate speed, making a special signal. In the next moment, 3 figures appeared in the night sky 100 steps behind him. They were also 3 black-clothed experts. Although they were of different sizes, their auras were sharp and powerful. It was obvious that their strength was extraordinary. The 3 black-robed men stepped across the night sky and stood on the huge rock. The leader was thin and tall. His eyes were as sharp as lightning, and his aura was unfathomable. He wore a bronze mask with a green face and fangs. His hands were behind his back, and he emitted a cold and dignified aura. The most conspicuous thing was the purple mark on his forehead. It was a lifelike small sword that flickered with a faint purple light. Occasionally, there were flashes of lightning. The other 2 men in black held swords in their arms and stood behind the man with straight backs. They looked like guards and attendants. Chapter 1917. The one who was addressed as Lord Yi was the man in the black robe and bronze mask. He looked at the man in the black robe with a hint of relief in his eyes. "You've done well. You didn't let me down." The man in the black robe was flattered and said respectfully, "Thanks to Lord Ye's nurturing, I'm where I am today. It's my honor to be able to serve Lord Yi. Even if I have to hide in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains for hundreds of years, it's worth it." Lord Yi nodded slightly and said in a dignified tone, "That's great. As long as I succeed in this mission, you'll have the greatest merit. I'll reward you handsomely." The man in the black robe became more and more emotional. He quickly bowed and thanked Lord Yi, taking the opportunity to show his loyalty and take credit. Lord Yi looked up at the starry sky and said in a low voice, "I'm very satisfied with the news you reported. I didn't expect that damn little bastard Ji Tianqing to be Kenshin's reincarnation. No wonder martial god Taihao thought so highly of that kid and even became the #1 god's disciple of the Luoshui divine nation. If I had known, I would have killed him in the cradle. How could I let him return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains?" Hearing this, the man in the black robe was stunned and asked subconsciously, "Lord Yi, did you fight with him before?" Lord Yi didn't answer and glanced at him coldly. The man in the black robe came to his senses and bowed. "Please forgive me, Lord Yi. I shouldn't have asked," Lord Yi said indifferently, "time is of the essence. Take advantage of the fact that Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist aren't here. Quickly bring me up the mountain and finish this business as soon as possible." The man in the black robe hesitated for a moment before explaining in a low voice, "After Ji Tianqing returned, he reactivated the sky dome array. Only the higher-ups of the sect can enter and exit. I've prepared a Dharma treasure. Lord Yi, please bear with it for a moment and enter the Dharma treasure. I can only bring you up the mountain. Then, he took out a palm-sized boat from his spatial ring. This boat was a tribulation-level flying boat that could accommodate hundreds of people. Lord Yi didn't hesitate. His body turned into a dazzling light and entered the flying boat. The other two men in black also hurriedly entered the flying boat. The black-robed man put away the flying boat and turned to fly towards the pillar of heaven's mountains. A quarter of an hour later, he flew to the sky above the pillar of heaven's mountains. He passed through the formation with his identity token and returned to the dojo at the peak of the mountain. The black-robed man silently flew across the night sky and landed below the sword steel in the middle of the dojo. He released his divine sense to explore the surroundings. Seeing that there was no one in the dojo within a radius of 100 miles, he took out the flying boat from his ring. Shwa! With a flash of light, Lord Yi flew out of the flying boat and stood below the sword steel. The black-robed man used a voice transmission technique to explain to Lord Yi, this subordinate has been hiding in the pillar of heaven's mountains for hundreds of years and has gained the trust of Huang Long and the various elders. In the past few hundred years, I have searched everywhere, but I have never found the shocking mystery. Huang Long was also secretive about this matter and did not mention it at all. No matter how his subordinates tried to pry, it was useless. After Ji Tianqing returned to the pillar of heaven's mountains, not only did he reactivate the sky dome array, the sword steel also regained its spiritual light. The disciples in the sect all said that they saw the power of the sacred sword. Therefore, this subordinate suspects that the most likely place to hide the shocking mystery is this sword steel. Lord Yi nodded and looked up at the sword steel that was thousands of feet tall. He said through a voice transmission, "It does make sense." Everyone thought that this sword steel was just an ordinary stone steel used to commemorate the burial of Heaven's sword. But who would have thought that the sword steel also has spirituality and can produce miracles and cause strange phenomena in the world? He flew around the sword steel and ordered in a deep voice, "Keep a lookout for me. I want to personally explore this sword steel and see what mysteries it has." After saying that, he stood proudly in the night sky and released his divine sense into the sword steel to check the situation inside. The black-robed man also flew into the sky and looked down at the entire dojo from above. He monitored the movements in the surroundings to prevent anyone from disturbing them. Lord Yi stared at the sword steel with a sharp gaze and carefully observed the changes in the sword steel. His divine sense entered the sword steel and slowly explored the mysteries inside. Soon, he discovered that the sword steel was indeed not an ordinary stone steel. Not only was it made of special materials that were comparable to a sacred weapon, but there was also an extremely complicated array structure inside the steel. Vast and boundless spiritual chi of heaven and earth, as well as violent star divine power, were all accumulated in the sword steel. Lord Yi even had an illusion that he was not facing an inanimate stone steel, but a living martial sage expert. Indeed, there is something else. This sword steel is really not simple. The shocking mystery of Kenshin's ascension is very likely to be hidden in this sword steel. Ha ha ha. Kenshin, oh Kenshin, you are really unfathomable. Lord Yi was a little excited and murmured with anticipation. But at this moment, the originally calm sword steel suddenly released a formless divine power of heaven and earth and fiercely attacked Lord Ye's divine sense. Lord Yi was caught off guard and did not expect the sword steel to take the initiative to attack. By the time he realized that something was wrong and wanted to dodge or block, it was already too late. Boom! An earth-shattering sound exploded in the divine sense. Lord Ye's divine sense was instantly shattered by the formless divine power of heaven and earth. His divine sense was destroyed and his divine sense was heavily injured. His consciousness also fell into a temporary daze. Even his body began to tremble violently as blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. At the same time, a 4-foot-long pitch-black sword flew out from the huge sword steel that was surrounded by spiritual chi. This was the sword of burial of heaven. The divine sword carried a dazzling silver light and fiercely stabbed toward Lord Ye's forehead. Lord Yi was in a daze and his consciousness was blurry. He was completely unable to dodge the attack of the sword of burial of heaven. However, just as the sword of burial of heaven stabbed him, a layer of dazzling golden light burst out of his body and formed an oval shield that protected him. Bang! A deafening sound exploded in the night sky and fiercely reverberated. The sword of burial of heaven fiercely shattered the golden shield, and golden fragments of light burst out and filled the sky. The incomparably violent impact shook Lord Yi and sent him flying backward. He tumbled and landed thousands of feet away. Before he landed on the ground, a large cloud of black ash had already fallen from the black robe in front of his chest. These were the ashes of the talisman that had been burned. They scattered in the night sky and quickly disappeared. It was obvious that Lord Yi was wearing a saint-level protective talisman. At the moment of life and death, the protective talisman burned of its own accord and formed a shield that saved his life. A martial saint expert like Lord Yi would naturally have many kinds of protective techniques. Whether it was Dharma treasures, talismans, or secret techniques, he would have everything. Moreover, Lord Yi was a scheming and astute person. He had always been sinister and cunning, and his defensive techniques were endless. The fatal attack of the sword of burial of heaven did not injure Lord Yi. Chapter 1918. The sudden turn of events caused the black-robed man to be overwhelmed with shock. His eyes were filled with fear. He was afraid that something would happen to Lord Yi, so he quickly flew toward the sword of burial of heaven and tried to stop it. However, he was only in the tribulation realm. How could he stop the sword of burial of heaven? Bam! The sword of burial of heaven hit the black-robed man with a flash of light, and there was a loud thud. He was sent flying, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he fell on the training ground. At the same time, Lord Yi had already come to his senses. He punched out 2 balls of golden flames toward the sword of burial of heaven. Bam! Bam! There were 2 more thuds, and the golden flames exploded, illuminating half of the training ground. The Heaven Burier sword was also repelled and flew back with a buzzing sound. Lord Ye's strength had reached the martial sage realm, and he was one of the best among the martial sages. The sword of burial of heaven might not have the upper hand in a head-on fight with him. However, Lord Yi had no intention of fighting. After sending the sword of burial of heaven flying with a punch, he came to the black-robed man's side in a flash and flew down the mountain with him. He used a secret technique to keep the black-robed man in his sleeve. Then, he held the black-robed man's token and passed through the sky dome array, escaping from the pillar of heaven's mountain. The sword of burial of heaven chased to the edge of the sky dome array and stopped. After a few breaths, it flew back to the center of the training ground, entered the sword steel, and quieted down. At the same time, several teams of patrolling guards and 2 elders rushed over as fast as lightning. Then, many deacons and disciples also rushed over to check the situation near the training ground. The previous battle had caused a huge commotion. Not only was there a loud bang, but there were also dazzling flames, which had awakened many people. However, when they arrived at the training ground, they did not see anyone. Other than the residual dermic power fluctuations in the air, there were no traces of fighting on the ground. Many elders and deacons were puzzled, not knowing what was going on. After Lord Yi escaped from the pillar of heaven's mountain, he returned to the valley 800 miles away. Shwa! He landed on a huge rock at the bottom of the valley and threw the black-robed man out with a flick of his sleeve. The black-robed man fell awkwardly on the huge rock. He hurriedly got up, and without caring about his own injuries, he bowed and apologized in fear. Lord Yi, this subordinate deserves death. It was because I didn't investigate the situation clearly that you were attacked. Lord Yi threw the identity token to him and said coldly, "There is a mysterious black sword hidden in the sword steel. It is most likely the legendary burial of Heaven Sword. This is such a huge piece of news, and you actually didn't investigate it properly before rashly sending me a message. If it wasn't for this emperor escaping in time, you and I would have been exposed. Once your identity is exposed, the plan that I have carefully prepared for hundreds of years will be destroyed on the spot. Lord Ye's tone was very sharp, and his entire body was emitting a strong sense of anger. The black-robed man was suppressed by the terrifying aura. He felt his entire body turn cold, as if he could feel the cold air of death. He was trembling with fear, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing to beg for mercy. "My lord, please calm down. This subordinate deserves death, it was this subordinate's negligence." However, this subordinate has never seen the burial of Heaven Sword, nor has he seen Ji Tianqing use it before. This subordinate couldn't have imagined. Lord Yi didn't scold him anymore. He shouted angrily, "For nearly 1,000 years, the entire continent's powerhouses have been searching for the burial of Heaven Sword, but they couldn't find it. Many powerhouses guessed that the mystery of Kenshin's ascension might be hidden in the burial of Heaven Sword. As long as they could find the burial of Heaven Sword, they could ascend like Kenshin and leave this rotten world. However, who would have thought that the burial of Heaven Sword, which had never appeared before, was actually hidden in the sword steel?" The black-robed man thought for a moment and hurriedly explained, "Lord Yi, in the past few hundred years, this subordinate has also investigated the sword steel countless times, but didn't notice anything strange. This subordinate is sure that the burial of Heaven Sword only appeared after Ji Tianqing returned to Tianzhu Mountain." Lord Yi frowned slightly and said in a cold tone, "No matter how the burial of Heaven Sword appeared, it is now in the sword steel. This news must be kept a secret. With the protection of the Sky Dome formation, the burial of Heaven Sword has endless power and is almost invincible. Even this emperor can't defeat it. No matter what, this emperor must obtain the burial of Heaven Sword and kill Ji Tianqing. However, this emperor must first report this news and then make a decision." Speaking up to hear, Lord Yi secretly clenched his fists, his eyes surging with an ice-cold light. The black-robed man thought for a moment and hurriedly reminded, "Now that Ji Tianqing and Huang Long have gone to the West River Valley, it is the best time for you to make a move." Lord Yi didn't comment on his suggestion and said in a dignified tone, "Just now, the commotion caused by this emperor and the burial of Heaven Sword was too big. It has already alarmed the disciples of the Tianzhu Mountain. Now that the Tianzhu Mountain is in chaos, you must hurry back immediately. Otherwise, it will arouse suspicion. Remember, no matter what, you must keep it a secret and don't expose your identity." The black-robed man hurriedly bowed and said, "This subordinate understands. Go." Lord Yi waved his hand. The black-robed man didn't hesitate anymore. He released the two black-robed guards from the flying boat and turned to fly back to the Tianzhu Mountain. He silently flew across the night sky and passed through the formation behind the Tianzhu Mountain, quietly returning to the peak of the Tianzhu Mountain. The Tianzhu Mountain was indeed in chaos. Countless disciples gathered around the training grounds, searching for traces of the assassin. Lord Yi stood in the valley for a moment before leaving with the two black-robed guards, quickly disappearing into the night. Unknowingly, another 6 hours passed. When the sun was high up in the sky, Ji Tianqing and Huang Long had already flown over 100,000 miles and arrived at the West River Valley region. This region had a radius of tens of thousands of miles and was a vast river valley. There were many towering mountain ranges in all directions and a few large rivers flowing through them. After tens of thousands of years of erosion, there was a lot of fertile land around the large rivers. The people of various races rested and built 5 cities, dozens of villages, and tribes in this region. After thousands of years of reproduction, the number of people in the West River Valley region had reached more than 5 million. After Ji Tianqing and Huang Long entered the West River Valley, they first entered Lifeng City. This was an ancient city with 2,000 years of history, and it was also the largest main city in the West River Valley. The towering stone walls were covered with mottled marks from the passage of time. The rocks had also been weathered into a brown color. Looking down from the sky, there were rows upon rows of houses and buildings in the ancient city, as well as bustling streets and alleys. However, the two city gates were tightly shut, and there were soldiers guarding both inside and outside the city walls. There weren't many people moving around in the city. The atmosphere was filled with panic and a heavy atmosphere. There were also many dilapidated ruins that were still emitting black smoke, with some flames that were either bright or dark. Chapter 1919. In order to keep it a secret, Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist used a secret art of invisibility and quietly entered Lifeng City. Moreover, in order not to reveal their whereabouts and information, the two did not go to the city lord's mansion. The two shuttled back and forth in the city, releasing their divine sense to explore the surrounding situation. Huanglong Daoist walked and introduced to Ji Tianqing, "Master, the city that was attacked last night was Lifeng City. Several elders and dozens of disciples of the Shiha sect also died in battle here. According to the Shiha sect's report, more than 80,000 people were killed last night, and thousands of city guards died in battle. The number of murderers was not large, but they acted very quickly. The battle only lasted for 2 hours before it ended. So far, the 5 cities have been attacked, and the number of casualties is between 600,000 and 100,000. The Shiha sect is completely out of options. There is almost no one they can use, so they can only ask for help from our sect." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and looked around with a sharp gaze. He used his divine sense to envelop the entire city, secretly screening and investigating. To be able to kill more than 80,000 people and thousands of city guards within 2 hours, the strength of the murderers cannot be underestimated. At least, they are all powerhouses in the Crossing Calamity realm. In addition, in the ruins of the battle, there are still some scattered corpses that have not been cleaned up. There is still some devil chi hidden in those corpses. It can be seen that the culprit is indeed the Devil Clan. But I don't know where the Devil Clan is currently hiding, and whether they will appear again." Huanglong Daoist nodded repeatedly, and his face showed deep admiration. "There are several ruins in the city, scattered in all directions. Master didn't even go to the ruins to investigate, but you can sense the aura of the Devil Clan? You are so sensitive to the aura of the Devil Clan?" Ji Tianqing said indifferently, "This is nothing. If you have fought with the Devil Clan for many years and killed millions of Devil Clan, you will also be able to sense it." Huanglong Daoist was secretly speechless. He thought to himself, when did Master fight with the Devil Clan and kill millions of Devil Clan? With his own strength, he killed millions of Devil Clan. Doesn't that make him the nemesis of the Devil Clan, making the Devil Clan tremble in fear and hate him to the bone? No wonder Dark North Mountain schemed to deal with Master. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything else and continued to wander around Lifeng City while releasing his divine sense to search for clues and traces. For a full 6 hours, he had indeed found many clues. Through these clues and traces, he could reconstruct the scene of last night's battle, deduce the strength of the Demon Clan's experts, and what secret techniques they used. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing did not find the hidden demon race powerhouse, nor did he know where the other party went. Even if he borrowed the power of the heaven-mending pearl, he did not sense the existence of the fiend race powerhouses. It was only in the evening that he had to stop his search. "I've already searched Lifeng City 3 times, but I haven't found any hidden devil experts. The demons have all retreated, leaving no informants or spies in the city." Huanglong Daoist asked worriedly, "Shizuan, what should we do? Why don't we wait in Lifeng City, wait for the demons to make a comeback, and then kill them?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and calmly analyzed. Previously, the demons attacked several cities separately, but they all retreated after one attack, and did not attack a second time. This means that the demons did not do this to massacre the cities, but to create chaos, and purposely lure me out. Therefore, the demons that attacked Lifeng City last night probably won't come again. After a pause, he continued, however, Lifeng City is the largest city in the West River Valley. Just in case, Huang Long, you stay here to prevent the demons from making a comeback. Once the demons appear, send a message to Master. Huang Long Daoist hurriedly asked, Shizuan, where are you going? Ji Tianqing looked at the setting sun in the west and said with a serious expression, to the West River sect. Huang Long Daoist was startled for a moment, then suddenly understood. Disciple understands. You mean, the 5 cities have been attacked, and the next target of the demons will definitely be the West River sect. If we rush there now, we can wait for them to come. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, that's right, this place is not far from the West River sect, we can get there before dark. I must go immediately. Huang Long Daoist hurriedly dissuaded him, Shizuan, since the demons are likely to attack the West River sect tonight, then you can't go. The demon's target is you. If you go alone, won't you be walking into a trap? Even if you insist on going, disciple will go with you, so that I can protect you. Although Huang Long Daoist's attitude was very resolute, Ji Tianqing's tone was solemn, and he disbelievingly ordered, Huang Long, Master knows what to do, you don't need to say more. You stay in Lifeng City, and wait for Master's orders. Master will go to the West River sect now. If I find any movements of the demons, I will send a message to inform you to come. After that, he added, this is an order, you can't disobey. This. Huang Long Daoist was suddenly in a dilemma, and he fell into hesitation. He was silent, and there was a struggle in his heart. After a while, he nodded and agreed. Disciple obeys, but Master, please be careful, and put your own safety first. Ji Tianqing nodded, then turned and left. He quietly flew out of Lifeng City, and flew to the west. Huang Long Daoist stayed in the city, still in the invisible state, and did not show himself. He hid in the highest tower in the city, overlooking the whole city, and monitoring the movements of the north and south city gates. The mountain gate of the West River sect was 30,000 miles west of Lifeng City. It was 1,000 feet high mountain, and it was also a land of spiritual veins, one of the 108 mountain peaks. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the West River sect, it was just dusk, and night was about to fall. He stayed in the invisible state, landed on the mountain peak, and secretly observed the situation of the West River sect. He saw that the West River sect was quiet, and there were few traces of people moving around. There was only one group of patrolling guards. It could be seen that many elders, deacons, and disciples of the West River sect had been sent out to guard the city. Currently, the West River sect was short of manpower, and the defense was weak. Fortunately, the West River sect had a mountain protection array, a sage-level array that had lasted for thousands of years, protecting the entire sect. Ji Tianqing hid outside the array, sitting on a millstone in the forest, and waited quietly. Time passed quietly, and soon, 4 hours had passed. It was already late at night, and the night sky was as dark as ink, and the cold wind whistled like knives. The West River sect was lit up with scattered lights, and it seemed particularly cold and quiet. Ji Tianqing was still sitting on the millstone, using the secret skill of turbid heaven to sense the situation around him. Suddenly, he sensed a powerful aura quietly approaching from the east. The aura was somewhat mixed, and it was obviously the aura of many experts mixed together. Chapter 1920. Ji Tianqing had dealt with the Devil Clan countless times. Whenever he saw black clouds or blood clouds, he would pay special attention and be cautious. Relying on the Armillary Heaven's secret skill, he controlled the heaven and earth within 1,000 miles. Therefore, when the black cloud was still 400 miles away, he sensed something was wrong in advance. When the black cloud flew close, his divine sense had already explored it clearly. There were 12 different auras in the black cloud. Each aura represented a strong devil clan powerhouse, and they were all above the third layer of the crossing calamity realm. Ji Tianqing quickly took out the communication jade slip and sent a message to the Huanglong Daoist. The target has appeared. As expected, they want to attack the Shiha sect. Come quickly. It was a very short and concise sentence. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and sent out a spiritual light. The jade slip flew into the night sky and quickly disappeared. When the communication jade slip flew out, a faint spiritual light flashed and disappeared. However, those devil clan powerhouses were very vigilant. Two of them noticed the spiritual light flashing and immediately left the black cloud and flew over. Swish! Swish! Two black-robed experts of the demon clan flew over, one on the left and one on the right. They released their powerful divine senses, which descended from the sky and enveloped the area. Ji Tianqing quickly used the invisibility skill. His aura merged with the heaven and earth within 1,000 miles and quietly retreated. He was not in a hurry to meet and fight with the other party. He decided to lurk in the dark and continue to observe for a while. After all, there were only 12 devil clan powerhouses in this black cloud. Although there were many of them, they were still not strong enough to destroy the Shiha sect quickly. He had to suspect that there must be more devil clan powerhouses lurking in the dark. At the same time, the black cloud quietly shattered and 10 devil clan powerhouses flew out silently. Everyone landed on the top of the mountain and scattered outside the mountain guarding array. Two of the devil clan members were still searching for the source of the spiritual light, while the other 10 devil clan members began to move. While exploring the surrounding situation, they studied the mountain guarding array of the Shiha sect. They seemed to have a tacit understanding. After about 100 breaths, the two devil clan members could not find the source of the spiritual light, nor did they find anything unusual, so they had to give up. The 12 devil clan members joined forces and quietly set up a devil clan formation outside the mountain guarding array. In order to set up the formation, they used many talismans, blood crystals, demon bones, and other materials. When he was halfway through setting up the formation, a group of patrolling guards from the Shiha sect happened to fly over. The demon race experts immediately took action. Without hesitation, they sent out black mist and demon chi, which enveloped the 9 patrolling guards. Shwa! A few clouds of dense demonic fog were scattered over, wrapping around the 9 patrolling guards, making them unable to break free or escape. Their bodies were corroded by the demonic mist, and they quickly turned into pools of blood and white bones. They didn't even have time to scream before they all died. After the demonic mist dissipated, the blood and bones were also devoured by the demons. Just like that, the 9 Essence Soul Realm patrolling guards vanished without a trace. Time passed quietly. The 12 demon race experts continued to set up the formation. Their movements were nimble and quick, and their coordination was extremely tacit. Ji Tianqing hid in the dark and observed. Soon, he saw the clues. Looks like I didn't guess wrongly. These devils want to use the formation to break the formation. The 12 devils were just making preparations to set up the formation. With their strength, it's impossible for them to break the saint-level formation. There must be even stronger experts behind. That's the key to breaking the formation. Soon, 30 minutes passed. The 12 devils also finished setting up the formation and made their preparations. At this moment, a cold and powerful aura rapidly approached from afar. Ji Tianqing sensed the abnormality and used a mystic art to investigate. Indeed, a faintly discernible black shadow teleported over from afar. That was an elder dressed in a blood-red robe. His body was as thin as a bamboo pole, and he had a head full of purple hair. His entire face was hidden under a pitch-black cloak, only revealing a pair of scarlet eyes. There was no way to see his face clearly. Shwa! With every step he took, he could teleport hundreds of miles away. In a short span of 4 breaths, he teleported 400 miles away and arrived at the peak of the Shiha sect. When the blood-robed elder landed on the peak, the 12 devils all knelt on the ground respectfully and bowed in unison. The blood-robed elder stood tall in the night sky. He glanced at everyone before raising his hand to indicate that they could rise. After everyone stood up, he walked to the front of the protective formation and waved his hands, sending out streaks of purple and blood-red light to activate the demonic Tao formation. Then, he controlled the demonic Tao formation to gather an endless amount of demonic power and blasted it at the protective formation. Thousands of streaks of purple demonic light converged into a giant scythe that was hundreds of meters long. It slashed down like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Kaboom! An earth-shattering boom exploded in the night sky like a thunderclap. At that moment, the entire mountain peak shook violently. Cracks appeared on the ground, and the mountain collapsed into countless pieces of rubble. The protective formation that enveloped the entire mountain peak was also slashed open by the giant purple scythe. The crack, which was hundreds of meters long and half a meter wide, almost broke through the 5-colored light barrier. The light barrier, which was hundreds of miles in radius, shook violently and flashed with 5-colored light. The silent Shiha sect was also awakened from its slumber. Lights were lit in many palaces and mansions, and there were bursts of exclamations and shouts. Many martial artists appeared and flew into the sky in a panic to check the situation. The blood-robed elder was not moved at all. He formed a seal with both hands and continued to send out purple and blood-red light to control the formation to continue attacking the protective formation. Soon, another demonic blade that was hundreds of meters long appeared. It slashed at the protective formation with destructive power. Kaboom! Another earth-shattering explosion sounded as the demonic blade hit the crack. The 5-colored light barrier could no longer hold on. The crack immediately collapsed and turned into a huge gap. The blood-robed elder turned into a streak of blood-red light and took the lead to pass through the gap and rushed into the Shiha sect. The 12 demonic powerhouses were also excited. Their eyes were filled with bloodlust. They all drew their weapons and turned into streaks of purple light and demonic fog, entering the gap. The demonic clan rushed into the Shiha sect and was about to start a massacre. A bloody disaster was about to befall. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing finally made his move. 5-colored divine lightning. He quietly flew near the gap in the formation and struck out with his palms, sending out 2 5-colored pillars of lightning. Each pillar of lightning was hundreds of meters long and contained the 5 colors of purple, red, blue, gold, and silver. It was a combination of 4 types of lightning and the silver divine star fire. When Ji Tianqing was in seclusion at Sky Pillar Mountain, it took him several days to successfully fuse the 4 types of lightning with the divine star fire. Even Kenshin from 1,000 years ago had not tried this. After all, Kenshin's heavenly tribulation was normal. It was not so abnormal. Ji Tianqing had fused the 4 types of lightning with the divine star fire. The process was very difficult, but the result was exciting. Chapter 1921. Boom! 2 bolts of 5-colored divine lightning hit the gap in the mountain guarding array at the same time, causing an earth-shaking roar. There were 4 demon clan powerhouses near the gap, and they were about to enter the Shiha sect through the gap. The 5-colored divine lightning suddenly struck, which caught them off guard. As the dazzling lightning exploded, the magical power shields of the 4 demon clan powerhouses were instantly shattered. Their flesh and blood bodies were also shattered by the divine lightning, turning into countless charred pieces that splashed in all directions. Of course, the divine souls of the 4 demon clan powerhouses were not spared, and they collapsed under the 5-colored divine lightning. Although they were powerhouses in the 3rd or 4th level of the tribulation realm, they had survived several heavenly tribulations and could withstand the power of the divine lightning. But when had they ever seen divine lightning with 4 attributes? What's more, the 5-colored divine lightning also contained the star divine fire. That was the divine power that a Tribulation Realm powerhouse could not withstand. The 4 demon clan powerhouses were killed on the spot, and they turned into ashes without leaving any bones behind. This sudden turn of events caused the other 8 devil race powerhouses to turn pale with shock and horror. Some of them had just rushed into the array, and some were outside the array. But they all turned their heads and looked in the direction of Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing removed the invisible state and was standing in the night sky, looking at them with a cold face. Seeing this scene, the 8 demon clan powerhouses' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Murderous intent surged out of their bodies, and they roared with grief and indignation. Bastard! Someone actually sneak attacked us. It's a human boy, kill him. Everyone, don't let down your guard, let's work together to kill him. Damn reptile, I'm going to skin you and pull out your tendons. The 8 demon clan powerhouses all brandished their weapons and rushed toward Ji Tianqing without caring about their own safety. They slashed out overwhelming saber light and blood shadows. Suddenly, the dazzling saber light and sword shadows and blood flames lit up half of the night sky. Ji Tianqing's figure was also drowned by all kinds of brilliance. But he was fearless and ignored the attacks of the 8 demon clan. When all kinds of magic attacks were about to hit him, his body became almost transparent and looming. Without a doubt, this was the chaotic heaven secret technique. He already turned into 1,000 li of heaven and earth. Bang 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 bang. Countless saber lights and sword shadows struck him, but they were all shattered, turning into billions of specks of light that scattered in the night sky. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was safe and sound. He raised his palms again and shot out 2 dazzling golden lights at the 8 demon race powerhouses. Heavenly Dragon Palm. The dazzling golden light condensed into 2 10,000 feet long golden divine dragons. They let out deafening dragon roars and swooped down from the sky. The expressions of the 8 demon race cultivators changed drastically. Their eyes were filled with horror as they hurriedly dodged in all directions. Boom! Boom! The 2 golden dragons crashed down and struck the 2 devils on the spot, causing deafening booms to erupt. The 2 devils who were hit were unable to resist at all. Their bodies immediately disintegrated. Their souls flew out and floated in the night sky unconsciously. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the surface of the 2 balls of dark purple light was covered with cracks. Although they were not dead, their souls were severely injured and they had already fallen into a coma. Before the other demon race cultivators could save them, Ji Tianqing struck out 2 thunderbolts with his palms and struck the 2 balls of purple light. Kaboom! The 2 balls of purple light shattered on the spot and scattered in the night sky. At this point, half of the 12 demon race powerhouses had been killed and only 6 were left. The 6 demon race cultivators were still in shock. They scattered in the night sky and surrounded Ji Tianqing. Although they had the advantage in numbers, they stared at Ji Tianqing cautiously and did not dare to act rashly. The 2 sides were in a standoff. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to look at the peak of the mountain to check on the situation of the West River sect. The crimson-robed elder had already rushed into the West River sect and was on a killing spree. The square with a radius of 10 miles had become a bloody battlefield. Hundreds of West River sect guards, disciples, and deacons were attacking the crimson-robed elder with all their might. However, the crimson-robed elder was extremely powerful. He had already reached the martial sage realm and was in an invincible position. No matter how the West River sect people attacked him, he was safe and sound. On the other hand, he could kill many guards and disciples with a flick of his finger. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing frowned and revealed a dignified expression. He is indeed a martial sage elite. I wonder which demon sage is he? Seeing the crimson-robed elder killing the West River sect disciples wantonly, Su Mo was anxious and his body surged with violent killing intent. However, if he wanted to stop the crimson-robed elder, he had to first deal with the 6 demon race cultivators in front of him. At this moment, the 6 demon race cultivators had already arranged themselves into a battle formation. With the help of the demon race's secret skill, they launched an attack together. Demon Sky 6 Dao. The 6 demon race cultivators stood in different positions and waved their swords and sabers at the same time. 36 purple light demonic blades descended from the sky. The 36 demonic blades lit up the night sky and formed a special pattern that contained great power and mystery. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a cold light. Breaking Sun Sword. He raised his palms and formed a sword art with both hands. In an instant, 12 golden light swords were released and stabbed at the 6 demon race cultivators. Bam! 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 The 36 purple light demonic blades slashed at him. However, his body was transparent and merged with the heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, the power of the demonic blades was neutralized and he was unharmed. The 12 golden light swords penetrated the blockade of the purple light demonic blades and stabbed the 6 demon race cultivators. The 6 demon race cultivators were sent flying. The blood light shield and armor were destroyed and dark purple demon race blood splattered all over their bodies. Ji Tianqing sent the 6 demon race cultivators flying with one move and severely injured them. He took the opportunity to use his ultimate move to kill them all. Soul-slaying sword. He roared angrily. Golden light surged from his body and erupted with earth-shaking power. The golden primordial spirit golden sword flew out from the top of his head and into the night sky. It became a giant sword that was thousands of feet tall. Under his control, the giant sword slashed through the night sky and slashed at a demon race cultivator. Bang! The demon race cultivator couldn't dodge in time and was immediately slashed in half by the giant sword. He let out a heart-wrenching scream. The primordial spirit golden sword slashed again. The demon race cultivator's soul was also shattered and he died on the spot. The other 5 demon race cultivators were scared out of their wits. They rushed into the protective mountain array desperately and begged for the protection of the blood-robed elder. However, Ji Tianqing knew what the enemy was going to do. He had already controlled the primordial spirit golden sword to block the gap in the protective mountain array. Die! He roared with killing intent and controlled the primordial spirit golden sword to slash again and again. Soon, he killed another 3 demon race cultivators. There were only 2 demon race cultivators left. Seeing that they couldn't escape into the protective mountain array, they could only turn around and run. They couldn't care less about the mission or the presence of the blood-robed elder. Running for their lives was more important. Ji Tianqing immediately chased after them. He controlled the primordial spirit golden sword to chase after them. At the same time, the blood-robed elder killed all the disciples and deacons on the square and destroyed half of the West River sect. Chapter 1922. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing sped through the night sky as fast as lightning. 10 miles in front of him, a demon in a black robe was running for his life. Slash! Ji Tianqing let out a furious roar as he controlled the 1,000-feet-long golden sword to slash at the demon. The primordial spirit golden sword cut through the night sky like a beam of golden light and struck down like a thunderbolt. Bam! With a dull explosion, the demon was hit by the primordial spirit golden sword. His body exploded into pieces and demon blood splattered everywhere. Another demon expert died under Ji Tianqing's sword. The only remaining demon expert was scared out of his wits. He used a forbidden secret skill and turned into a beam of bloodlight to escape. But at this moment, the blood-robed elder had caught up with Ji Tianqing. They were 1,000 feet apart. Little bastard, you deserve to die. The blood-robed old man let out a tiger-like roar as he waved his sleeves and shot out 2 blood-red streams of light. Like 2 waterfalls, they tore through the night sky and fiercely blasted towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was wrong and turned to face the enemy. Dharma body of heaven and earth. He roared and used the ultimate skill of the Dharma body of heaven and earth. His body became transparent and blurry and merged with the heaven and earth. But even so, the two streaks of blood-red light still hit him, causing two muffled booms to ring out. Bam! Bam! Ji Tianqing's body flashed with golden light and changed dozens of times. At the same time, the ground within a radius of 200 miles silently caved in. The two nearby mountains also collapsed soundlessly, turning into endless dust that scattered on the ground. Obviously, the power of the blood-robed elder's beams of blood-red light had been absorbed by the heaven and earth. Such a strange scene stunned the blood-robed elder. His eyes widened in disbelief. Seizing this opportunity, Ji Tianqing decisively launched a counterattack. Five-colored divine thunder. He suddenly waved his palms and shot out two colorful lightning pillars toward the blood-robed elder. The two thunderbolts were dozens of feet long, and they contained four different attributes of thunderbolts and the star divine fire. Their power was extremely shocking. The crimson-robed old man immediately reacted, and his figure flashed 1,000 feet to the side, dodging a pillar of lightning. However, the other five-colored divine lightning still struck him, causing a deafening explosion. Boom! The five-colored divine lightning exploded. The violent lightning and divine fire of the stars wrapped around the blood-robed elder's body. He was an overlord of the Devil Dao and had mastered hundreds of secret techniques of the Devil Dao. He had the power and divine abilities to destroy the heavens and earth. He was almost immortal. But even so, he was still afraid of the extreme yang lightning and the peerlessly terrifying star divine flames. Crackle! Crackle! A series of thunderous booms rang out, and the blood-robed old man's body trembled violently. However, after a few breaths, he circulated his energy to disperse the lightning and used the black mist to extinguish the star divine fire. Soon, he returned to normal. A layer of hazy bloody light flashed across his body, and the charred wounds on his body quickly healed. He stood in the night sky, staring at Ji Tianqing, and his body was surrounded by a towering killing intent. Kid, I have underestimated you. I didn't expect you to control 4 types of thunderbolts and the star divine fire. The blood-robed old man was indeed frightened. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a tinge of fear in his eyes. After all, thunderbolts were extremely effective against the Devil Dao, and so was the star divine fire. Fortunately, he was a devil saint, an old monster who had cultivated for 2,000 years, and mastered the powerful Xian Yin's secret technique. That was how he managed to survive. If it were any other Devil Dao expert, he would have been killed by the thunderbolts on the spot. Ji Tianqing looked at the blood-robed old man indifferently and asked coldly, "Old man, which one of the 4 great devils are you?" "Which one?" The blood-robed old man frowned and sneered eerily, "Ha ha ha. I thought you were quite capable and knowledgeable. I didn't expect you to not even know my name. You are so ignorant that it's laughable. Listen carefully, I am the 4th devil saint, Patriarch Shui Pao." At this point, Patriarch Shui Pao's cloak disappeared into thin air, revealing a wizen and coarse old face that looked like tree bark. On his dark and skinny old face, there was a wide blood-red mouth and a pair of scarlet eyes that were as red as fire. His long dark purple hair, surrounded by a mysterious purple flame, fell curly over his shoulders. A brutal, bloodthirsty, and domineering aura burst out from his body and spread in all directions. He stared at Ji Tianqing arrogantly and shouted in a deep voice, "Little bastard, the biggest mistake you have made in your life is not showing up tonight. Tell me your name. I don't kill nameless people." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and stared at him with a playful look. The corner of his mouth curled into a mocking sneer. "Do you really want to know my name? Ha ha ha. Are you afraid?" Patriarch Shui Pao sneered. Coward, you don't even dare to tell me your name. I don't want to dirty my hands by killing you. Ji Tianqing sneered. Then listen carefully. My surname is Ji, and my name is the God Fiend's father. How can there be such a long name? The God Fiends. Patriarch Xuepao listened carefully and mumbled to himself in confusion. He only realized it halfway through and flew into a rage. Little bastard, you must be tired of living. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry and was happy to stall for time. He continued, Patriarch Xuepao, you are one of the 4 great devils and the ancestor God Fiend's lackey. You can be considered a big shot in the diabolism. However, you don't know who the ancestor God Fiend's nemesis is. I am standing right in front of you, and you don't even know who I am. You must be blind. Patriarch Xuepao was scolded badly. He was so angry that he trembled and stared at Ji Tianqing with fire in his eyes. However, he suppressed his anger in the end. He could tell that Ji Tianqing was implying something. The ancestor God Fiend's nemesis? Your surname is Ji? Patriarch Xuepao's eyes widened, but his pupils gradually narrowed. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a sharp gaze. Patriarch Xuepao's heart throbbed. He trembled all over and clenched his fists tightly. You are Ji Tianqing? You are that damn Ji Tianqing? No wonder. No wonder you look so similar to the portrait. You have such powerful skills at such a young age. Patriarch Xuepao finally guessed Ji Tianqing's identity. He was so excited that he burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. I have searched high and low for you, only to find you by sheer luck. I came all the way to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and massacred 5 cities. I killed hundreds of thousands of insects just to lure you out. I didn't expect you to walk right into my trap before I even went to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to look for you. You damned little bastard, you really have a death wish. Ha ha ha. After confirming Ji Tianqing's identity, Patriarch Xuepao came to a realization. He no longer concealed it and revealed the truth without hesitation to express the excitement in his heart. Chapter 1923. Patriarch Xuepao laughed arrogantly. Ji Tianqing looked at him calmly. His eyes were cold and indifferent. Patriarch Xuepao was confident that he would win. He looked at him as if he was looking at a dead man. Ji Tianqing was the same. He looked at Patriarch Xuepao as if he was looking at a corpse. In his eyes, Patriarch Xuepao would definitely die. When you're done laughing, I'll send you on your way. Ji Tianqing said as he used a secret technique to attack Patriarch Xuepao. White Tiger Sacred Sword. Golden fire surged out of his body and quickly merged with the primordial spirit golden sword, making the golden sword even more dazzling. Swoosh! The giant golden sword, which was thousands of feet tall, slashed at Patriarch Xuepao with the fierce golden fire in the shadow of a huge white tiger. Before the sword arrived, the invisible sword intent had locked onto Patriarch Xuepao, making it impossible for him to escape. A mighty force that seemed to suppress the world came from all directions and enveloped Patriarch Xuepao. It was as if he was in a quagmire. He struggled but could not break free. He could only watch as the golden sword slashed at his head. At this critical moment, his wild laughter came to an abrupt stop. He quickly counterattacked. 2 balls of bloody fire lit up in his palms, and 2 white bone hammers appeared out of thin air. The 2 hammers were 3 feet long and made of unknown white bone. They had a sinister aura and exuded a bloody aura. This was the weapon that made Patriarch Xuepao famous. It was a saint-level demonic Dharma treasure, the Blood River Hammers. It was said that the 2 Blood River Hammers were not made by Patriarch Xuepao, but originated from ancient times. The ancient war of gods 30,000 years ago caused the gods to fall. The world was covered in blood, and hundreds of races were wiped out. Many demonic gods slaughtered hundreds of millions of lives, causing rivers of blood to flow on the ground. Mountains of white bones were everywhere. After hundreds of years, the rivers of blood and the mountains of white bones gradually disappeared. The resentment of hundreds of millions of lives also gradually dissipated. In a sinkhole where hundreds of millions of corpses were buried, a pair of sparkling, jade-like hammers appeared. This pair of dazzling white jade war hammers were, in fact, formed naturally from thousands of corpses and rivers of blood. They were naturally saint-grade demonic artifacts. When the Blood River Warhammer concealed its aura, it looked harmless, like a magic treasure of the Xianmen sect. However, when living beings and martial artists approached it, it would silently kill them. Their souls and flesh would also be absorbed by it and turned into a pile of bones. Only demons who had reached the Saint Realm could wield this pair of hammers. Over the course of tens of thousands of years, this pair of Bloody River Warhammers had been tossed around the Shenwu continent, falling into the hands of countless powerhouses. It was not until 800 years ago that Patriarch Xuepao obtained this pair of hammers. However, since then, his skills had improved by leaps and bounds. He relied on the Blood River Warhammers to defeat countless powerful enemies and slaughter millions of living beings. Blood River of 10,000 Li. Patriarch Xuepao's voice was as loud as a bell. His body and his war hammer expanded violently, turning into a giant that was hundreds of meters tall. He brandished his pair of Blood River war hammers, filling the sky with bloody light as they ruthlessly smashed towards the white tiger sacred sword. Boom! The giant golden sword and the white bone war hammer collided fiercely, producing an earth-shattering sound that reverberated fiercely in the night sky. At that moment, golden light splashed in all directions, and bloody light swirled in the air. Violent shockwaves spread out like ripples, sweeping across the night sky for hundreds of kilometers. The 1,000-meter-tall primordial spirit golden sword crumbled on the spot, turning into millions of golden fragments that scattered in the night sky. A 1-meter-long golden sword flew out, exploding with golden light before falling powerlessly. Ji Tianqing's figure was also thrown out of the golden fragments and fell to the ground. His face was deathly pale, and blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. His aura was somewhat chaotic, and his consciousness was somewhat blurry. After all, he had fused with the primordial spirit golden sword and clashed head-on with the Blood River Warhammer. Although his strength was comparable to a half-step martial saint, the Blood River Warhammer was a saint-grade treasure, and Patriarch Xuepao was also a martial saint powerhouse. There was still a huge gap between a half-step martial saint and a true martial saint. Thus, he had been injured by the Blood River Warhammer. His internal organs had been severely damaged, and his consciousness had sunk into a state of dizziness. In comparison, Patriarch Xuepao's fate was much better. He had also been sent flying by the violent force, and his pair of Blood River Warhammers flashed with bloody light. However, he had only suffered some superficial injuries, and his aura was somewhat chaotic. After he had retreated for 5 kilometers, he immediately stabilized himself and swung the Blood River Warhammer toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, your time of death has come. As long as I kill you, I will receive the recognition and inheritance of Lord Demon God, and I will have a chance to reach the divine realm. For the sake of my path to becoming a divine realm, you will die obediently. Patriarch Xuepao roared with a ferocious face, and his whole body burst out with a murderous intent. He held the Blood River Warhammer and smashed it toward Ji Tianqing. At this time, Ji Tianqing had just recovered from the dizziness. The 1-meter-long primordial spirit golden sword had also condensed into the size of an embroidery needle, and drilled back into his head. Just as he was about to fly back into the night sky, he saw Patriarch Xuepao pouncing toward him. 2 huge white bone warhammers burst out dazzling bloody light, and smashed down with a destructive force. An invisible force tightly wrapped around Ji Tianqing like a cocoon, and no matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free. He was about to be hit by the Blood River Warhammer, and even if he did not die, he would be seriously injured. However, at this critical moment, something unexpected happened. In the night sky 100 miles to the east, an angry roar that could pierce gold and crack stone suddenly rang out. "Demon, you are courting death." As the angry roar sounded, 6 dazzling golden lights appeared in the night sky and stabbed toward Patriarch Shuepao. Those were 6 dazzling golden sword lights, like lightning tearing the night sky apart, like meteors streaking across the sky. The sword lights were dazzling and powerful. Patriarch Shuepao glanced sideways and saw that the 6 sword lights were still 100 kilometers away, so he ignored them. He thought that the sword lights would only arrive when he smashed Ji Tianqing to death with his 2 hammers. At that time, he would have enough time to dodge the sword lights. However, what happened next was completely out of his expectation. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 6 golden sword lights strangely disappeared in the night sky, crossed the night sky, and appeared behind Patriarch Shuepao. Before the Blood River Warhammer could hit Ji Tianqing, the 6 sword lights stabbed Patriarch Shuepao. Bang 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 bang. A series of muffled sounds burst out, and the golden light bloomed, illuminating the night sky. Patriarch Shuepao's 300-meter-tall body was pierced by the 6 sword lights, and his demonic blood splattered everywhere. The violent impact blasted him away, and the pair of Blood River Warhammers flew out of his hands. The heart-wrenching pain made him twitch all over, and his face twisted. However, in his heart, he was even more shocked. He simply didn't dare believe that his sword technique was actually capable of heavily injuring him from a few hundred kilometers away. At the same time, a big hole suddenly appeared in the night sky near Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! A dazzling golden light lit up and flew out of the hole, landing beside Ji Tianqing. Chapter 1924. This white-haired old man with white eyebrows was wearing a yellow Taoist robe and holding a golden horsetail whisk. His body was tall, his face was majestic, and his whole body was exuding a majestic aura. In front of him, Patriarch Shuepao looked even more repulsive, and his aura was gloomy and violent. Without a doubt, this yellow-robed Taoist was Huang Long. "Master, this disciple came late to save you, please forgive me." Huang Long Daoist landed beside Ji Tianqing and looked at his injuries with concern. He hurriedly bowed and apologized. Ji Tianqing had already adjusted his qi circulation and smoothed out the turbulent mana. He turned his head to look at Huang Long Daoist, and a gratified smile appeared on his face. He nodded and said, "I didn't expect you to come so quickly." It had only been an hour since he had sent out the jade slip. Huang Long Daoist had crossed more than 30,000 miles in such a short time and arrived at the Shiha sect in time. This was simply godly speed. Huang Long Daoist was praised, but he was not happy at all. He said with a little shame, "I've let you down, master. I broke the void when I received the message. I was almost late." "You're not late." Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. He commented, "It seems that your heart sutra of sword control has been cultivated to perfection. Breaking the void, concealing the sword in the void, and divine 16 swords are not a problem." "Yes." Huang Long Daoist nodded and looked coldly at Patriarch Shuepao. He said in a deep voice, "Master, please help me, I'll take care of this demon." Huang Long Daoist saw that Ji Tianqing was injured, and obviously wanted him to take the opportunity to heal. However, in order to save face for his master, he would not say it out loud, so he changed his words. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He warned, "This demon is Patriarch Shuepao, the last of the 4 demonic saints. Be careful of the Blood River hammer in his hand." Huang Long Daoist cupped his hands to show that he understood and flew toward Shuepao Ancestor with the horsetail whisk. "Shuepao Ancestor, you damned old bastard, how dare you come to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to cause trouble again? You were lucky that my sword didn't cut off your claws last time." You won't be so lucky tonight. Huanglong Daoist's white hair fluttered in the wind as he shouted in a deep voice. Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing finally understood that the demon clan experts who attacked the Pillar of Heaven's mountains half a year ago were led by ancestor Xuepao. Of course, Patriarch Xuepao knew Huanglong Daoist. He stared at him coldly and sneered, "Old Daoist Huanglong, I'll never forget what you did to me. Back then, it was at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains that I was struck by your sword because you had the geographical advantage. But tonight, don't even think about hurting a single hair on this old man's head. And this place will be your burial ground." Huanglong Daoist stroked his beard and sneered disdainfully, "You, a low-level devil? How dare you talk back to me? I was just about to take revenge on you. Since you've delivered yourself to me, I'll grant you your wish." As soon as he finished speaking, Huanglong Daoist made a spell with his left hand and shook the golden horsetail whisk in his right hand. Then, golden light scattered all over the sky. Flowing like phantom. The dark golden horsetail whisk was made up of thousands of golden threads. After it spread out, it burst into golden light like fireworks. Thousands of golden thread like golden light scattered and quickly condensed into hundreds of sword radiances. They pierced toward Patriarch Xuepao like a rain of arrows. Just in time. Patriarch Xuepao didn't retreat. Instead, he laughed wildly and waved a pair of white bone war hammers to smash the sword radiances in the sky. Blood Dragon Sky. Two dazzling blood radiances burst out from the two white bone war hammers and condensed into two blood dragons that were thousands of feet long. They rushed toward Huanglong Daoist. Bang, 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 bang. Hundreds of golden sword radiances collided with the two blood dragons. A series of loud noises echoed in the night sky. The sword radiances were shattered and the two blood dragons collapsed on the spot. They turned into blood radiances and scattered in the night sky. The two sides were evenly matched in the first exchange of blows. Neither side had the upper hand. However, Huanglong Daoist had a backup plan. He waved his horsetail whisk again and made a mysterious spell seal. There was no dazzling golden light or sword radiance. However, the night sky within 100 miles seemed to be frozen. It was completely still. In the next moment, more than a dozen rays of light suddenly lit up in the pitch-black sky and fell down like meteors. The 16 golden lights came so fast that they landed on top of Patriarch Xuepao's head in the blink of an eye. Only then did he see clearly that they were 16 giant golden swords that were thousands of feet long. Each of the giant swords was majestic and exuded a domineering aura. They seemed to represent the righteousness of heaven and earth and the brilliance of the sun and the moon. The 16 giant swords attacked at the same time. It was as if heaven and earth were punishing him and the gods were unleashing their wrath. Patriarch Xuepao's expression changed. He said in a low voice, "Damn old Daoist. It's the hidden sword void again." At the critical moment, he quickly activated a piece of shell on his chest. It lit up with a dazzling purple light. It was a black and purple turtle shell. It was covered with ancient patterns and strange demonic patterns. This was Patriarch Xuepao's protective magic treasure. It was also a sacred weapon. It was said that in ancient times, there was a black tortoise. It fought against the ancient demon gods to protect its people. In the end, several ancient demon gods worked together to kill the black tortoise. They blasted it into pieces and slaughtered millions of people. Only this broken shell was preserved. However, it was also contaminated by endless demonic aura. It was nurtured in the blood of the people for hundreds of years and turned into an evil demonic creature. Thousands of years ago, a demon ancestor obtained this shell. He gathered the power of 3 great demon saints and refined it into a magic treasure of the demon Tao. He named it the Black Tortoise Demonic Disc. After a few generations, this Black Tortoise Demonic Disc was obtained by Patriarch Xuepao. It became one of his most precious magic treasures. Black Tortoise returns to heaven, celestial demon 9 esoteric spells. Slaughter the people and create an endless sea of blood. Patriarch Xuepao roared loudly. He used all his strength to activate the Black Tortoise demonic disc. It turned into a black and purple wall above his head. Bang! 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 16 golden swords slammed down, and 12 of them hit the Black Tortoise demonic disc, causing a loud explosion. However, Huanglong Daoist waved his horsetail whisk and controlled 4 of the golden swords. They changed their attack trajectory and hit Patriarch Xuepao from the side. Bang! 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 Patriarch Xuepao was sent flying by the giant swords. Blood splattered all over his body. Damn you, old bastard! You are dead meat! Patriarch Xuepao cursed angrily. He controlled the Black Tortoise demonic disc to protect himself and swung the white bone war hammer at Huanglong Daoist. Huanglong Daoist stood in the night sky with a murderous look. He kept waving his horsetail whisk and casting spells. He controlled the 16 giant swords with his divine thought. Under his control, the 16 giant swords of Kenshin appeared and disappeared. They disappeared and appeared behind Patriarch Xuepao from time to time, silently attacking him. Whoosh! 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 The dazzling golden light illuminated the night sky, making the ruins as bright as day. Chapter 1925. Huanglong Daoist and Patriarch Xuepao fought fiercely in the night sky. Their fight was so intense that it was earth-shattering. After 100 breaths of time, the two of them had exchanged more than 100 moves, but there was still no clear winner. However, Huanglong Daoist was not injured at all. Patriarch Xuepao, on the other hand, had more than 10 bloody holes and wounds on his body. Ji Tianqing had been watching from afar and secretly treating his injuries. After observing for 100 breaths of time, he had already known that Huanglong Daoist's strength was slightly better than Patriarch Xuepao's. Especially, Huanglong Daoist had cultivated the Heart Sutra of swordsmanship to a higher level after receiving his guidance. He could already control 16 swords. This had doubled Huanglong Daoist's combat strength. If Patriarch Xuepao did not have the Black Tortoise demonic plate and the white bone war hammer, Huanglong Daoist would have cut him into pieces with his swordsmanship. Of course, Huanglong Daoist had gained the upper hand and was suppressing Patriarch Xuepao. Patriarch Xuepao was forced to retreat. His face was filled with grief and indignation. He cursed angrily, "Old Taoist Huanglong, you damn old man, how could you improve your swordsmanship in such a short time?" He remembered clearly that when they attacked Tianzhu Mountain half a year ago, Huanglong Daoist could only control 9 swords. Now, Huanglong Daoist could control 16 swords, and his combat strength had greatly improved. This level of change and improvement was extremely rare for a martial saint expert. Huanglong Daoist laughed proudly and said, "Blood demon, are you afraid now? Don't you think it's too late? I said just now that I will definitely kill you here tonight. Come, have a taste of my void 1,000 swords kill." As he spoke, Huanglong Daoist put his horsetail whisk behind his back. His hands were pinched with a sword spell, and he danced in the night sky. He used the 10,000 creations void steps and performed a mysterious sword spell with both hands, controlling the power of heaven and earth within a few hundred miles. Instantly, the surrounding 200 miles of space was sealed, as if everything was frozen. In the night sky in all directions, dense 5-colored light spots suddenly lit up. There was a dazzling golden light, a mysterious white light, a blazing fire, and a deep blue light. Stepping on the stars, worshipping the stars with my sword, guiding the stars to the moon, I am Wanxiang. 10,000 swords of the void, kill. Huanglong Daoist roared and waved his right hand fiercely. The 5-colored light spots in all directions suddenly condensed into tens of thousands of 5-colored sword lights. They shot out from the void and pierced toward Patriarch Xuepao. Swish! Swish! Instantly, the area within a radius of 200 miles turned into a world of 5-colored sword light. Each of the sword lights was hundreds of meters long. They were extremely powerful and mysterious. Tens of thousands of sword lights crisscrossed, forming a sword net that blotted out the sky. Ancestor Xuepao's figure was immediately submerged. Patriarch Xuepao had nowhere to run or hide. He could only rely on the protection of the Black Tortoise demonic disc and the mana shield. At the same time, he waved the white bone war hammer crazily, striking out a bloody light that blotted out the sky to meet the sword lights. Bang! 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 The deafening sound of collision and the dull sound of explosion kept exploding in the night sky. Patriarch Xuepao's furious counterattack shattered countless sword lights. However, after those shattered sword lights dissipated, new sword lights would appear in the night sky. He could block 80 to 90% of the sword lights, but it was inevitable that he would be pierced by a small number of sword lights. The mana shield kept shattering, and the Black Tortoise demonic disc could not protect him from all sides. In the blink of an eye, he was pierced by the sword lights and was bleeding all over. He screamed in agony. Ah! Ah! The more agony Patriarch Xuepao screamed, the more excited Huanglong Daoist was. He used all his strength to control the sword formation and swore to cut Patriarch Xuepao into pieces. However, Ji Tianqing was watching the battle not far away. He nodded with a gratified look and shook his head with a regretful expression. The Stellar Sword Codex that I left behind includes the sword-wielding Heart Sutra, the demigods and dragons, and the universal sword formation. Huanglong did not disappoint me. He actually combined the sword-wielding technique and the universal sword formation to create the Void Thousand Sword Kill. It's a pity that the essence of this secret skill is still a sword formation. It can't merge with heaven and earth, so it's still a level lower. If Huanglong can use the sword formation to gather the power of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles, he can easily kill a martial sage expert. Ji Tianqing pondered silently as countless ideas flashed through his mind. After a short while, an idea flashed through his mind and he immediately had an idea. Therefore, he sent a voice transmission to Huanglong Daoist and said, "Huanglong, you can improve the Void Thousand Sword Kill." Hearing this, Huanglong Daoist's eyes widened in anticipation. "Master, please teach me. Watch carefully." Ji Tianqing shouted and immediately performed the Armillary Sphere secret skill to merge himself with heaven and earth within 1,000 miles. Swoosh! His body turned transparent and completely disappeared into heaven and earth within 1,000 miles. In the next moment, he gathered the power of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles to form a majestic divine power and infused it into the universal sword formation. Instantly, Huanglong Daoist's body shook and his eyes were filled with shock. The power of the tens of thousands of light swords in the night sky increased by 2 times and their light became even more dazzling. "Huanglong, remember this move." Ji Tianqing's voice resounded in the sky. The voice came from all directions as if heaven and earth were speaking. No one could figure out the source. Immediately after, the tens of thousands of light swords in the sky gathered together and formed 81 huge swords. Each huge sword was thousands of feet long. They were like the swords of a deity. They were sacred and dazzling and could destroy heaven and earth. Slash! Along with a furious roar, the 81 divine swords slashed toward Ancestor Xuepao from all directions. Ancestor Xuepao's face immediately turned extremely ugly, revealing a look of horror. The terrifying power of the divine swords made him feel the aura of death. He wanted to teleport away, but the heaven and earth within 1,000 miles were sealed and suppressed. He could not move. He even had an illusion that it was not the 81 divine swords that were going to kill him, but the entire heaven and earth. At the moment of life and death, he could only hide under the black tortoise demonic plate and use the white bone war hammers to block in front of him. Boom! 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 The 81 divine swords hit Ancestor Xuepao hard and drowned his body. A loud explosion that shook the 9 heavens erupted and spread for thousands of miles, causing the night sky to ripple. The surrounding 300 miles of mountains and rivers silently collapsed, turning into a boundless wasteland. The black tortoise demonic plate was blown away and its light dimmed as it fell dozens of miles away. The 2 white bone war hammers flew into the sky and were hit by the violent airwaves. They flew to the ground in the distance. As for Ancestor Xuepao, he was blown away with blood all over his body. His body was full of holes and cracks. His body was almost destroyed. He was severely injured and his divine soul was in a daze. He fell to the ground with the airwaves. Chapter 1926. Huanglong Daoist widened his eyes in disbelief. He was incomparably excited, filled with shock and admiration. He had thought that with Ji Tianqing's guidance, he would be able to defeat Patriarch Xuepao with his sword-wielding sutra. However, Patriarch Xuepao had 2 divine artifacts to protect him and was proficient in many diabolical secret techniques. He had fought with Patriarch Xuepao for more than 100 moves and had only managed to injure him slightly. If they had continued fighting, it would have been a long time before they could have won. However, Ji Tianqing had improved his Void Thousand Sword kill and defeated Patriarch Xuepao with just 1 move. He was severely injured and unconscious. This was something that he could not have imagined. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that the Void Thousand Sword kill that he had created could be so powerful. Oh my God! Master's attack is indeed earth-shattering. I understand now. As long as I merge the Void Thousand Sword kill with heaven and earth, I can reach a higher level with the help of heaven and earth's divine power. Master is indeed a godly person. His words are better than my 1,000 years of cultivation. It was not that Huanglong Daoist did not work hard on his cultivation, nor was it that his comprehension was too poor. It was not that he was not good at swordsmanship. It was that his direction was wrong and he was not comprehensive enough. However, Ji Tianqing had explained everything to him and verified the results with his actions. This was more effective than his 1,000 years of cultivation. Just as Huanglong Daoist was exclaiming in excitement, Ji Tianqing had revealed himself. Swoosh! He appeared beside Patriarch Xuepao and raised his left arm. A dazzling golden light shone from his palm. God-slaying spear. His expression was cold as he shouted angrily. He waved his hand and unleashed a torrential golden divine flame. The mysterious golden divine fire immediately formed a golden divine spear that was more than 100 feet long and pierced towards Patriarch Xuepao's head. The spear was going to smash Patriarch Xuepao's head and destroy his divine soul. Patriarch Xuepao was still dizzy and his divine soul was not awake yet. He could not dodge the attack. He was about to be killed on the spot. However, his black tortoise demonic disc was a sacred artifact that had been refined by him for hundreds of years. In the nick of time, the black tortoise demonic disc flew back and stood in front of Patriarch Xuepao. Boom! The golden divine spear collided with the black tortoise demonic disc, and a thunderous boom erupted. Instantly, the black tortoise demonic disc cracked and shattered into several pieces with a cracking sound. The golden divine spear also exploded into a huge ball of golden divine fire, rising into the air like a mushroom cloud. Patriarch Xuepao had just dodged the attack of the golden divine spear, but he was engulfed by the golden divine fire. In an instant, his body was burned to ashes, scattering a large amount of black ash. When he crashed into the ruins, there was no flesh on his body, only a pitch-black skeleton was left. Patriarch Xuepao's body was destroyed just like that. The pain of being burned by the fire stimulated his mind. He was already scared out of his wits, and his fighting spirit had completely disappeared. After landing on the ground, he did not dare to stay any longer. Without hesitation, he used a forbidden secret technique and turned into a streak of crimson light to escape into the ground. Swoosh! In a flash of light, Patriarch Xuepao went through the ground and teleported 30 miles away. In the next moment, he teleported again and escaped dozens of miles away. When Ji Tianqing started to chase after him, he was already 100 miles away. Ji Tianqing also teleported and chased after him with all his might. He swore to kill Patriarch Xuepao once and for all. However, Patriarch Xuepao was a martial sage expert after all. Even if he was severely injured, a martial sage expert could not be underestimated. Ji Tianqing chased after Patriarch Xuepao for 800 miles, but he still could not catch up with him. Instead, he completely lost track of him, and Patriarch Xuepao escaped. Helplessly, he could only give up the chase and curse with a heart full of unwillingness. Damn bastard! When I become a martial sage again, you will definitely die. As soon as he finished speaking, Huanglong Daoist flew over and landed beside him. Master, did Patriarch Xuepao escape? Are you injured? Huanglong Daoist looked at Ji Tianqing with concern and then looked at the night sky in front of him. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said in a low voice, "Forget it, there is no need to chase after him. He has already escaped. After all, he is a demon sage who has cultivated for 2,000 years and has mastered the blood escape secret skill of the demon clan. Neither you nor I can catch up with him. However, his Dharma body was destroyed by us tonight and he was forced to use the forbidden secret skill. He must be severely injured. He will not be able to recover to his peak state for at least a few decades." Hearing this, Huanglong Daoist heaved a sigh of relief. His gloomy mood became much better. That is good. At least for a few decades, Patriarch Xuepao will not be able to cause trouble. We have one less strong enemy, and the pressure on us will be greatly reduced. Ji Tianqing shook his head with a serious expression. That is not necessarily the case. If the ancestral demonic god completely abandons him and refines him into a demonic puppet, he might be able to recover his strength quickly. Huanglong Daoist frowned and asked with some doubt, Patriarch Xuepao is one of the 4 demon sages. How could the ancestral demonic god be willing to sacrifice him? If he is refined into a puppet, he will lose his demonic foundation, and there will be no possibility of him breaking through. Ji Tianqing calmly replied, "You do not understand the ancestral demonic god. It is the most savage of the demonic gods, and it will not show any mercy, even to its own subordinates and descendants. As long as it can maintain the power of the demon clan, what is the point of sacrificing a demon sage's future? What it lacks the most right now is time. If it waits for a few more decades and recovers to the demonic god realm, at that time, it will not need any help and will be able to kill all the living beings on the continent by itself." Huanglong Daoist was secretly speechless when he heard this, and his heart was filled with dread. "Master, does this mean that if you cannot recover to the deity realm before it does, then the entire Shenwu continent will be finished?" Ji Tianqing nodded without saying a word. The atmosphere was somewhat stifling, and Huanglong Daoist hurriedly changed the topic. "Master, how is the situation with the Western River sect? Shall we go and take a look?" Ji Tianqing nodded and led him back to the Western River sect. Half an hour later, the two arrived at the Western River sect and landed on the mountain peak. As far as the eye could see, the entire mountain peak was in chaos. The plaza in the middle had been completely destroyed, and it had been reduced to a deep pit. Blood and corpses were scattered everywhere. The surrounding palaces and residences were also in shambles, and only a few pieces of broken fences and broken walls were left. Flames and thick smoke were still rising from them. The few dozen disciples, attendants, and guards who had survived were all injured. Everyone had terrified expressions on their faces, and some were hiding in the dark to treat their injuries, while others were busy saving people and putting out the fire. After this calamity, the Western River sect's vitality had been greatly damaged. More than half of its disciples and core strength had been killed, and it was unknown how long it would take for them to recover. Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist worked together to cast a spell to help the Western River sect repair their protective array and fill in the ravines and deep pits on the mountain peak. Chapter 1927. The Shiha sect was one of the 9 sects and 18 factions. Moreover, it was only a small sect that was ranked at the bottom. Even though the Western River sect had suffered heavy losses, Ji Tianqing could only sympathize with them and give them appropriate help. As for the aftermath, he did not have time to care about it. After leaving the Shiha sect, he rushed back to Tianzhu Mountain as fast as lightning. Huanglong Daoist followed him closely and asked about the situation while rushing back. Master, Ancestor Xuepao was seriously injured by you and fled. Is this over? Let's go back to Tianzhu Mountain. Aren't you worried that there are other demon powerhouses hiding nearby? Ji Tianqing answered without turning his head, Ancestor Xuepao is the commander of those demons. Even he was seriously injured and fled. The other demons must have fled. Even if there are a few demons left, they can't cause much trouble. All the sects can deal with them together. What I'm worried about now is that the demons or other forces will take the opportunity to invade Tianzhu Mountain. After all, you and I are not on Tianzhu Mountain. Huanglong Daoist felt that it was reasonable and muttered in his heart, that's true. We are not on Tianzhu Mountain. Our sect's defense is weak. If someone attacks Tianzhu Mountain and destroys our base, the loss will be too great. After the incident in the West River Valley, he had learned the corresponding lesson. He decided that after returning to Tianzhu Mountain, he would order all the major sects to be informed. Once the demons were found to be causing trouble, all the sects would inform each other and join forces to deal with the demons. Unknowingly, it was noon. Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist were flying above a dark green forest. In all directions, there were vast mountain ranges and towering peaks. This area was very quiet. There were no sounds of birds or beasts in the forest. It was a little strange. Ji Tianqing had a bad premonition. He could not help but frown. He released his divine sense and spread it around. Huanglong Daoist saw his strange expression and also realized that something was wrong. He asked, Master, did you find something? Ji Tianqing was silent. He used his divine sense to explore a radius of 100 miles. He did not find anything unusual. Thus, he shook his head and said, It's nothing. Let's just leave. As he spoke, he sped up and flew over the forest. Huanglong Daoist suppressed the doubts in his heart and quickly followed him. However, at this moment, a sudden change occurred in the world. In the vast forest below, a dazzling 5-colored light suddenly lit up the sky. Shua! At the same time, 5-colored brilliance lit up in all directions, soaring into the sky and forming a huge light screen in the blink of an eye, enveloping an area of 200 miles in radius. The huge 5-colored light screen quickly closed, forming a light barrier that sealed off the entire area. An invisible force of heaven and earth came from all directions, fiercely suppressing Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist. Suddenly, the two of them felt as if they had been grabbed by an invisible hand. Their flying speed suddenly decreased, and they had no choice but to stop. Master, someone is ambushing us. Huanglong Daoist sensed that something was wrong. His face immediately turned cold, and his eyes were cold. He cast a spell with his left hand and held the horsetail whisk in his right hand. He released his divine sense to explore the surroundings, looking for the culprit. Ji Tianqing's expression was still calm as he stood calmly in the sky. He secretly used the armillary sphere secret technique and merged himself with heaven and earth. Instantly, the suppressive force of the formation was dispelled. At the same time, a cold laugh came from the sky above the two of them. "Since you've fallen into my trap, do you think you can leave alive? You must be dreaming." It was the voice of a middle-aged man. It was cold and mocking, and it was as sharp as metal clashing. It was quite ear-piercing. Ji Tianqing immediately realized that the man's voice was fake. He had deliberately used magic power to change his voice. He looked up at the sky and saw a thin and tall figure standing 1,000 feet above him. It was a mysterious man in black clothes and a black robe. He wore a green bronze mask with fangs on his face. The mask covered his entire face, revealing only a pair of cold and indifferent eyes. From the outside, this person covered himself up tightly, and there were no distinguishing features at all. Other than the fact that he was a man, there was no other information about him. Ji Tianqing stared sharply at the black-robed man and said coldly, "It's just a saint-level great annihilation formation. It's nothing. If you think that you can trap us with just this grand formation, then you're really too naive." Hearing this, the black-robed man frowned slightly, and his dark pupils contracted. Obviously, his heart was filled with shock. He didn't dare believe that Ji Tianqing was actually able to see through the details of this grand formation in such a short period of time and accurately call out its name. However, his expression quickly returned to normal, and he said coldly, "With the Huanglong Daoist protecting you, of course the Great Annihilation Formation can't do anything to you. However, since I've made my move, there's no way I'll leave anyone alive. You and the Huanglong Daoist will both be buried here. There's no way you can escape." As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed man raised his palms, and his 10 fingers formed a spell. A 5-colored stream of light shot out, forming a mysterious spell seal. The spell seal was injected into the 5-colored light shield, and immediately, the light shield released a destructive power. Within the light shield, thousands of 5-colored giant swords were instantly condensed, forming a murderous sword formation. They attacked Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sword light flashed, and the sword qi swept across the sky, sealing the area within 100 miles. Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist had nowhere to hide, and they were immediately engulfed by the sword light. Of course, the two of them did not intend to hide. Huanglong Daoist's left palm struck out several palm shadows, and his right hand waved the horsetail whisk, shooting out sword light to meet the 5-colored giant swords. He used the Big Dipper step, and the horsetail whisk used the sword technique. The sword light actually covered the sky, and formed a circular sword net, protecting himself and Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing ignored the sword light illusions around him, and he coldly stared at the black-robed man. He said in a deep voice, "You call yourself emperor, and you have the techniques of a martial saint. You must be a martial saint powerhouse who has been famous for a long time. There aren't many martial saints on the Shenwu continent, and there are less than 100 of them. Do you dare tell me your name?" The black-robed man did not hesitate and bluntly said, "I don't dare. Don't embarrass yourself in front of this emperor with such lowly provocation. Moreover, it doesn't matter who this emperor is. You only need to know that this emperor has received a sky-high bounty mission and is here to kill you." When Huanglong Daoist heard this, he was immediately enraged, and he cursed with murderous intent, "You bastard, a dignified martial saint actually wants to be an assassin? You don't deserve to be a martial saint. There are many powers that want to deal with our Tianzhu Peak, but this is the first time I've seen someone as despicable as you." The black-robed man was cursed at, but he still maintained his composure, and his eyes remained indifferent as he continued to cast his spell. Ji Tianqing saw through the clues, and he raised his eyebrows and sneered, "Huang Long, you're wrong. This guy is definitely not an assassin. Moreover, there isn't any astronomical bounty on him." Chapter 1928. The Huanglong Daoist was also puzzled. Which martial saint would become a killer or an assassin? In the entire Shenwu continent, which martial saint was not an overlord who ruled over an empire? When he heard Ji Tianqing's words, he immediately understood. He stared coldly at the black-robed man and said in a contemptuous tone, "Hee, not only are you hiding, but you're also making up lies to hide your identity. You're such a disgrace." Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. "That's right. As a martial saint, he's so disgraced that he might as well kill himself. He's guilty and doesn't have the confidence to kill us, which is why he doesn't dare to reveal his identity. In order to hide his identity, he even made up such a shallow and laughable lie." The two of them echoed each other, degrading the black-robed man to the point that he was worthless and ashamed. The black-robed man was someone who held a high position and lived like a prince. How could he endure such direct humiliation? He was so angry that his body trembled, and his eyes were covered with a layer of purple light that flickered with lightning. If looks could kill, then Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist would have been cut into pieces. Ji Tianqing. Old Daoist Huanglong. No matter how much you ridicule me, it's useless. Your fate has already been decided. Today, I swear that I will kill the two of you and tear you to pieces. I'll grind your bones and scatter your ashes to vent the hatred in my heart." As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed man waved his hands and formed a spell. He controlled the thousands of multicolored swords and fiercely attacked Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist. Previously, the thousands of swords had formed a sword net that had wrapped around the two of them and slaughtered them without restraint. But now, the thousands of sword lights had gathered together and formed a torrent of multicolored light that descended from the sky. At this moment, the power of the entire absolute annihilation formation was gathered together, and it was extremely shocking. The two of them had no time to dodge and were immediately submerged by the multicolored light. Boom! A deafening explosion reverberated through the mountains. The dazzling multicolored light was even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing used the Armillary Heaven's secret technique in time, and his body merged with the heaven and earth within 1,000 miles. His entire body became transparent and disappeared into thin air. Thousands of five-colored giant swords slashed down, cutting through the sky without any delay and smashing into the sea of trees below. Instantly, the forest within a radius of 50 kilometers was blasted into ruins. Mud and wood chips flew everywhere. Huanglong Daoist was also hit by the multicolored torrent. It fell from the sky and smashed into the forest below. However, there was a heart-protecting mirror on his chest. It was a saint-level treasure that Kenshin had bestowed upon him. When he was hit by the five-colored torrent, the palm-sized heart protection mirror immediately blossomed with a dense green light, forming a shield to protect him. Boom! With a muffled thud, he fell from the sky and smashed into the ruins, creating a 1,000-foot-deep hole in the ground. The azure light shield collapsed, and he lay at the bottom of the pit, covered in mud. He struggled a few times before he got up. Although he looked a little disheveled, he was only slightly injured. However, he was only slightly injured, and his magic power was a little chaotic. In an instant, he was back to normal. He used his dermic powers to shake off the dust on his body. He immediately rushed out of the deep pit and flew back to the sky. The black-robed man was still standing at the top of the multicolored light shield. He was using his secret technique with all his might to control the power of the entire formation. Seeing that Huanglong Daoist had returned to the sky safe and sound, his eyes were filled with anger, and he roared with murderous intent. "Old Taoist Huanglong, go to hell!" Sky-shattering slash. He stretched out his palms and slashed downwards as if he was using all his strength. Both ends of the multicolored light shield surged with mighty multicolored light, forming 2,000-foot-long multicolored giant swords that slashed at Huanglong Daoist at the same time. The 2,000-foot-long giant swords were like two giant guillotines. They slashed down from the left and right, and their power was incomparably terrifying. It was as if the world was about to be cut in half on the spot. When Huanglong Daoist heard this angry roar, he immediately frowned, and a hint of suspicion flashed in his eyes. He vaguely remembered that he seemed to have heard of this secret technique that merged the formation with the sword technique somewhere before. However, the situation was critical, and he did not have time to think about this problem. 10,000 swords return. At the critical moment, Huanglong Daoist used his sword manipulation technique and used his divine will to control the 10,000 swords in the void. Swoosh! 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 Tens of thousands of pitch-black cracks instantly appeared in the sky in all directions. A golden sword flew out from each crack and flew towards Huanglong Daoist at the speed of light. Tens of thousands of golden swords gathered around him and immediately condensed into a huge shield of golden light. In the next moment, 2,000-foot-long giant swords descended from the sky and slashed at the sword light shield with a deafening sound. Boom! Crack! The two multicolored giant swords collapsed and turned into endless fragments that burst out in all directions. The shield formed by tens of thousands of swords was also shattered and turned back into tens of thousands of golden swords that scattered in the sky. Huanglong Daoist's figure appeared, and he was still safe and sound. He stood in the sky and quickly waved his arms, forming a sword technique seal to control the tens of thousands of golden swords. Unifying chi of heaven and earth, the sword cuts through the void. He shouted coldly and angrily. He formed a sword technique with both hands and pointed at the black-robed man in the sky. Suddenly, the tens of thousands of golden swords changed direction and stabbed at the black-robed man like a dense rain of arrows. Boom! 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 The tens of thousands of golden swords fiercely stabbed at the formation, causing the multicolored light shield to shake non-stop. Layers of ripples appeared and flashed with multicolored brilliance. A muffled sound exploded and reverberated fiercely in the formation, causing the ground to shake. Although the Heaven and Earth Annihilation formation was very powerful, and the multicolored light shield's defense was also very strong. However, Huanglong Daoist controlled the tens of thousands of swords and continued to attack the formation, concentrating their attacks on a small area. That area could not withstand such a fierce attack at all. Soon, cracks began to appear, and cracking sounds could be heard. Seeing that the formation was about to be broken by Huanglong Daoist, the black-robed man was extremely anxious and angry. He shouted coldly and quickly formed a Dharma seal with both hands, controlling the formation's power to repair the cracks in that area. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing, who had been invisible all this time, suddenly appeared outside the formation. He transformed into thousands of miles of heaven and earth and had quietly escaped the formation's range. Swoosh! He suddenly appeared thousands of feet behind the black-robed man and slashed out a giant golden sword that was thousands of feet long. Sky-splitting sword. The giant golden sword that was thousands of feet long was his primordial soul golden sword. The giant sword was surrounded by four-colored lightning and silver star divine fire. Its power was very terrifying. The black-robed man did not expect Ji Tianqing to escape the formation in such a strange way and appear behind him. When the giant sword slashed down, he sensed that something was wrong, but it was too late to dodge. Kaboom! Chapter 1929. A dazzling golden light enveloped the black-robed man and sent him flying into the distance. His black robe was in tatters and hung on his body like a pile of rags, making him look somewhat pathetic. However, he was a martial sage after all, and his physical defense was extremely strong. Ji Tianqing's sword did not injure him and did not leave a wound on his body. His divine soul was only shaken and his consciousness went into a temporary state of blur. After flying for 10 miles, he regained his consciousness and returned to normal. At this moment, Huanglong Daoist had already controlled the 10,000 swords and destroyed the 5-colored light shield. Crack! With a crisp cracking sound, a huge gap appeared in the 5-colored light shield and shards of light splattered all over the sky. With the gap as the center, dense cracks extended in all directions and quickly spread across the entire formation. Swoosh! Huanglong Daoist passed through the gap and escaped from the ultimate annihilation formation. He sped through the sky and attacked the black-robed man while controlling the 10,000 golden swords to attack. Swish! 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 The 10,000 golden swords streaked across the sky like a rain of arrows that covered the sky and drowned the black-robed man. At this critical moment, the black-robed man hurriedly cast a spell to form a shield to block the golden swords. Bam! 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 Countless golden swords stabbed him, causing the shield to swell and deform. Huanglong Daoist flew to 10,000 feet away from him and cast a sword spell with a serious expression, controlling the 10,000 swords to form a sword formation. Universal sword formation. In just 2 breaths, the sword formation formed by the 10,000 swords covered a radius of 10 miles. The black-robed man was trapped in the sword formation and was attacked by the 10,000 swords. He immediately fell into a dangerous situation and could only defend himself tiredly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Huanglong Daoist hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing and said, "Master, I'll hold this person back. You should quickly return to Tianzhu Mountain." However, Ji Tianqing didn't agree. He transmitted his voice, "There's no hurry. This person set up a formation to ambush us here. Obviously, he knows our whereabouts. Even if I can't kill him, I will find out his background." Huanglong Daoist immediately understood what he meant. As a martial sage, the black-robed man wanted to assassinate Ji Tianqing but did not dare to reveal his identity. This meant that there was something wrong with his identity. This person actually knew Ji Tianqing's whereabouts. This was even more problematic. Huanglong Daoist controlled the universal sword formation with all his might and attacked the black-robed man with all his might, preventing him from escaping. Previously, the black-robed man had used the formation to trap Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist and attack them wantonly. Now that Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist had escaped from the formation, he was trapped by the universal sword formation and was in great danger. The situation of both sides was immediately reversed. Ji Tianqing was about to use his secret technique and join hands with the Huanglong Daoist to attack the black-robed man. At this moment, in the sky not far away, 2 streams of light suddenly flew over. Within the 2 5-colored flowing lights, there were 2 black-robed martial artists. Both of them were tall and had cold faces. Both of them held their treasured swords and rushed over as fast as lightning. They recklessly rushed towards Ji Tianqing, brandishing their swords and thrusting out sword shadows that filled the sky. Clearly, these 2 black-clothed men were in cahoots with the black-robed man. However, the strength of these 2 people was relatively low. They were only at the 6th or 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendent stage. Swish! Swish! Dozens of sword lights, hundreds of feet long, came from all directions and surrounded Ji Tianqing. He was fearless. His body merged with the primordial spirit golden sword and launched a counterattack. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. The gigantic sword ignited with golden flames and condensed into the shadow of a vermilion bird that was as large as a mountain. The vermilion bird then slashed at one of them. Boom! The huge sword shattered a few sword lights with a loud bang. It streaked across the sky for 10 miles and slashed towards the head of a black-clothed man. The black-clothed man was suddenly shocked. His eyes revealed a strong sense of fear as he hurriedly retreated to avoid it. As he retreated, he brandished his sword and slashed out sword lights while channeling his energy to condense a magical power shield. However, the power of the vermilion bird sacred sword was far beyond his imagination. Boom! A loud explosion burst out and shook the sky. The sword lights that the black-clothed man slashed out shattered one after another. The magical power shield also collapsed on the spot. He was slashed by the vermilion bird sacred sword. His body instantly collapsed like a broken porcelain bowl, shattering into more than a dozen pieces. Dark red blood splattered out, blooming in the sky and sprinkling down one after another. A cloud of dense white mist flew out from the pieces of flesh and blood. This was the black-clothed man's soul. However, just as his soul flew out, it was burned to ashes by the golden flames before it could escape. The power of the vermilion bird sacred sword did not only lie in its violent lethality, but also the power of the raging flames that could burn the heavens and destroy the earth. After killing a black-clothed man with a single slash, the primordial spirit golden sword changed direction and slashed towards another black-clothed man. That black-clothed man witnessed his comrade being killed in an instant with his own eyes. He immediately trembled in fear and instinctively turned around to flee. However, his speed was far inferior to Ji Tianqing's and he was caught up in an instant. Azure Dragon Sacred Sword. An azure light burst out from the giant sword and condensed into the projection of an azure dragon that was over 10,000 feet long. The projection of the azure dragon wrapped around the giant sword and erupted with earth-shattering divine power as it pierced towards the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man's eyes were filled with horror as he hurriedly took out a talisman. Escape Talisman. The talisman ignited with dazzling flames and turned into a ball of blazing white light that enveloped his entire body. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, his figure disappeared into thin air, escaping into the void. This escape talisman could help him teleport 5 kilometers away and save his life in the nick of time. Almost at the same time as his figure disappeared, the azure dragon sacred sword struck the spot where he was standing. Kaboom! Suddenly, the azure dragon sacred sword blasted open a pitch-black crack in the sky, revealing the ice-cold void. The loud noise shook the sky and the void trembled. The power of space also became chaotic. White light enveloped the black-clothed man. He had just entered the void, but before he could escape far, he was sent flying. When the void trembled, he was squeezed out of the void and returned to the sky with a swoosh. The black-clothed man was dumbfounded and his face was filled with horror. He could not believe that Ji Tianqing actually pierced through the sky and forced him out of the void. This was simply unimaginable. In the past, he had encountered many life and death situations and was always able to use escape talismans to escape. That was why he was able to survive until now. However, this time, he had a premonition that his doomsday had arrived. Swoosh! The azure dragon sacred sword flashed with azure light and instantly pierced through the sky and slashed towards his head. The black-clothed man was in complete despair. He did not hesitate to use a secret technique. His entire body ignited with 5-colored spiritual flames as he frantically retreated. However, it was futile. His fate was already sealed. Bang! With a muffled sound, the azure dragon sacred sword struck him. The 5-colored spiritual flames were extinguished on the spot and his magic power shield shattered. His physical body was also fragmented and blood splattered everywhere. Even his divine soul could not escape and was shattered by the azure dragon sacred sword. The 2 black-clothed men were killed by Ji Tianqing. Chapter 1930. The battle between the Huanglong Daoist and the black-robed man had reached its climax. When Ji Tianqing returned to the battlefield, all he saw was golden light bursting into the sky, and the shadows of spells blotted out the sun. Loud noises could be heard, shaking heaven and earth. The universal sword formation was riddled with holes by the black-robed man. It could no longer be maintained and was about to collapse. Countless golden swords were shattered, turning into fragments of golden light that scattered in the sky. The black-robed man did not have it easy either. His clothes were tattered, and his body was covered in blood. In the battle just now, he had been attacked by the universal sword formation more than 100,000 times. Even though he had blocked 99% of the sword radiance, he had still been hit by hundreds of times. No matter how strong his physical defense was, he could not withstand such a violent attack. His chest, back, arms, and legs were all covered in wounds, and fresh blood seeped out. This made him furious. His entire body emitted a murderous aura, and blood-red flames ignited around him. He could not remember how many years it had been since he had been injured like this. He had carefully planned to ambush Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist. In the end, he did not manage to kill them. Instead, he was beaten black and blue. This was a great humiliation. The black-robed man's heart was filled with shame and anger. His murderous aura was boiling, and his eyes were covered with a layer of blood. Heavenly river flowing water. He suddenly roared. His left hand formed a spell, and his right hand waved a dark purple sword, which scattered sword shadows all over the sky. Suddenly, the wind and clouds in the sky were raging, and dazzling purple lightning flashed. Boundless gray clouds were quickly gathering, causing the sky within a radius of several hundred kilometers to darken. Such a terrifying scene was like the arrival of a heavenly tribulation. In the next moment, 9 holes appeared in the gray clouds, and dazzling divine flames from beyond the heavens surged out of the holes. The crimson divine flames were like pillars of water. They poured down from the holes and rushed toward the Huanglong Daoist. The so-called heavenly river flowing water was not water, but the flowing fire outside the Big Dipper's atmosphere. Suddenly, heaven and earth were illuminated by the flames, turning red. The terrifyingly hot temperature turned the sky a few hundred miles into a vacuum. The ground, which had long been in ruins, was scorched black. The wood chips scattered in the ruins turned into ashes, and the surrounding forest was set ablaze. Once the 9 pillars of heavenly flames poured down, everything within 1,000 miles would be scorched. Such a terrifying aura was the true power of a martial saint. Huanglong looked up at the sky and saw the 9 Big Dipper fire pillars descending from the sky. Immediately, a serious expression appeared on his face. He knew that the all-forms sword formation could not be repaired, nor could it withstand the power of the Big Dipper fire pillar. Whoosh! His figure flashed and disappeared into the void. In the next instant, he was dozens of miles away. Withdraw! He made a gesture with both hands and shouted in a low voice. Then, he put away all the sword lights in the sky. Instantly, the thousands of golden swords disappeared into the void without a trace. Almost at the same time, 9 Big Dipper fire pillars descended from the sky and poured down on the ruins. A series of muffled explosions reverberated between heaven and earth, lasting for a long time. 9 huge pits immediately appeared on the ground, bursting with torrential flames and lava. The rocks and soil were burned into crimson lava that spread in all directions. The area within 100 miles turned into a sea of fire. The surging waves of fire spread in all directions, and soon covered more than 500 miles. The ground in this area turned into a lake of lava, and the surrounding forest was turned into ashes. Even the mountains, which were thousands of feet tall, were burned red, and quickly collapsed. The destructive power continued for a long time without stopping. It was only when the area within a radius of 800 miles turned into a sea of fire and a lake of lava that the power of the heavenly flames began to weaken. By this time, Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist had already retreated 800 miles away. The black-robed man was unwilling to give up. He flew across the sky at lightning speed, and chased after the two of them. Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist used a secret technique. Their figures flickered in the sky, and they flew in the direction of the heavenly pillar mountain. The two of them were extremely fast, and they were like lightning. The black-robed man chased for a while, but he couldn't catch up with them. He could only watch as their figures disappeared into the sky. The black-robed man had no choice but to give up the chase. He cursed angrily. Damn bastards! They were so arrogant just now, but in the blink of an eye, they ran away with their tails between their legs. How despicable! But I can't chase them to the heavenly pillar mountain. That's their home ground. With the help of the sword of burial of heaven, their strength will increase greatly. The black-robed man clenched his fists so tightly that they creaked. His eyes were filled with murderous intent, and his whole body was emitting a cold chill. He looked at the horizon and muttered to himself in a low voice, "You are lucky this time. The next time I attack, it will be the time of your death." After saying that, the anger in his heart dissipated, and he turned to leave. Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist were flying in the sky. After flying for 3,000 miles, they slowed down when they saw that the black-robed man didn't chase after them. The Huanglong Daoist was puzzled. He couldn't help but ask Ji Tianqing through voice transmission, "Master, we clearly have the upper hand. We could have fought with that guy to the end. Why did we retreat?" In his opinion, although the heavenly river's water was powerful, it couldn't hurt him and Ji Tianqing. Neither of them were injured, but the black-robed man's injuries were not light. If they continued to fight, they would definitely be the ones to gain the upper hand. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a playful smile. He explained through voice transmission, "After all, that person is a martial sage. Even if we use all our strength, we can't kill him. He has a way to escape. Since we can't kill him, why should we waste time and take the risk? Anyway, our main goal is to find out his identity and origin. Now that I have the answer, there's no need to be entangled with him." Hearing this, the Huanglong Daoist was suddenly energized. He asked expectantly, "Master, you already know who he is?" "Yes, I'm pretty sure." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Let's return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains first. I'll be able to confirm the answer after I do some research." The Huanglong Daoist didn't ask any more questions. He suppressed the anticipation in his heart and continued to follow him. A few hours later, when the sun was about to set, the two of them returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The heavenly formation was safe and sound. The peak of the mountain was also quiet. There was nothing unusual. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing secretly heaved a sigh of relief. "I was worried that someone would attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountains when Huanglong and I left. Now it seems that I worried too much." This thought flashed through his mind. He brought Huanglong through the heavenly formation and returned to the dojo at the peak of the mountain. However, just as he landed on the dojo, the voice of the burial of heaven rang in his mind. Chapter 1931. When burial of heaven's voice sounded in his mind, Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong. If everything was normal, burial of heaven would be sleeping in the sword steel, quietly recovering his primordial qi. As it turned out, his premonition was right. Something had happened at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing's figure flashed a few times and crossed dozens of miles, flying to the sword steel in the middle of the training hall. "Burial of heaven, what happened last night? Tell me in detail." He looked up at the sword steel and asked. Burial of heaven explained in a low voice, "Last night, 2 men in black sneaked into our sect and quietly came to the sword steel. One of them was a Tribulation Realm cultivator and hid not far away to observe. The other man in black was a martial sage and used his divine sense and secret techniques to investigate the sword steel, as if he was looking for some secret. I sensed that something was wrong and took the opportunity to sneak attack the martial sage, injuring his spiritual soul and fighting with him for 2 moves. That black-robed martial saint was very powerful. After blocking my attack, he fled with another black-robed man. After Burial of Heaven finished speaking, Ji Tianqing frowned and his expression became serious. Those 2 men in black could freely pass through the heavenly dome array. They sneaked into our sect and quickly escaped from the Pillar of Heaven's mountains? That's impossible. Even a martial sage would not be able to break the heavenly dome array so easily. Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, unless one of them was a disciple of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and had a token to enter the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. That's right. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said coldly, that's the only explanation. It seems that my guess was right. There are still spies in our sect. I didn't expect that when Huang Long and I left the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the spies would cooperate with the enemy from the inside. Burial of Heaven continued to analyze, that Tribulation of Heaven's black-clothed man should be a disciple of our sect. Only deacons and elders have tokens to enter and exit the heavenly dome array at will. Therefore, that person was either a deacon or an elder. In addition, this person was injured by my sword chi, and he won't be able to recover within half a month. As long as you check carefully, you will immediately find out who it is. Ji Tianqing nodded, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. I've long since guessed who that person is, but I've never been able to confirm it. Since he's left something behind, I'll be able to find him right away. Burial of Heaven said calmly, that spy took orders from the black-robed martial sage. He was able to become an administrator and an elder. He must have hidden in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains for many years. If you want to deal with him swiftly and decisively, you need to seriously consider the consequences. It's fine. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said with an indifferent expression, with me and Huang Long overseeing the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, what consequences can there be? He can't overturn the heavens. After a pause, he continued to ask, that's right, that black-robed martial sage, was he wearing a bronze mask with fangs, revealing only a pair of eyes? That's right. Burial of Heaven answered, and asked doubtfully, how do you know? Could it be that you've already fought with him? Ji Tianqing said with a sneer, of course. This person set up an ambush on my way back, and tried to kill me and Huang Long. Burial of Heaven said without hesitation, it must be a spy from our sect who told that black-robed martial sage your whereabouts. Only a few people know that you and Huang Long went to Shiha Valley. This way, it'll be easier to investigate the identity of that spy. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, continue to recuperate. I'll go find that spy and interrogate him directly about the black-robed martial sage's identity. If it's too late, I'm afraid that the spy will flee for his crimes. After saying that, Ji Tianqing turned and left, flying towards Tianzhu Palace with Huang Long Daoist. After a while, the two arrived at the gate of Tianzhu Palace. Ji Tianqing walked towards the conference hall and said to Huang Long Daoist behind him, Huang Long, go and bring Great Elder Nye Tianchen here. I want to see him now. If he tries to escape, don't be merciful, just capture him. Of course, you must keep him alive. I still have something to ask him. Huang Long Daoist felt a biting cold murderous intent from his cold tone, and couldn't help but silently mourn for Nye Tianchen. Disciple obeys. Huang Long Daoist cupped his hands and hurriedly left, rushing towards the palace in the east. Ji Tianqing stepped into the conference hall and walked steadily to the throne at the head of the table. As he walked through the hall, the walls on both sides lit up, illuminating the dark hall. He climbed onto the bronze throne and sat for a while. Ji Bai and Shou He rushed over after hearing the news and saluted him. After the two saluted him, they stood respectfully behind him, guarding the left and right sides of the throne. After a while, Huanglong Daoist brought Great Elder to the door of the conference hall. Huanglong Daoist entered the conference hall first and stood in the middle of the conference hall. Great Elder followed behind Huanglong Daoist. His steps were steady, and his face was calm as he came to the conference hall. There was no abnormality. "Master, Great Elder Nie Tianchen is here." Huanglong Daoist cupped his hands and saluted Ji Tianqing, then retreated to the left side of the conference hall and stood still. Nie Tianchen came to the conference hall and saluted Ji Tianqing respectfully. He said in a low and powerful voice, "Grand Disciple Nie Tianchen greets Grand Master. May I know why Grand Master has summoned me?" His voice was full of energy, and his expression was calm. There was no problem. Ji Tianqing glanced at him coldly and said in a playful tone, "It has been 16 hours, and you haven't run away. This is really surprising." Nie Tianchen was stunned and asked in confusion, "Grand Master, why do you say that? As a disciple of Tianzhu Mountain and the head of the elders, I am responsible for guarding the mountain gate and managing the affairs of the sect. Why would I run away for no reason?" Ji Tianqing suddenly laughed more and more playfully, "Ha ha ha, your face didn't change, your heartbeat and breathing were normal, and there was no abnormal change in your eyes. Nie Tianchen, your qi cultivation is really good. This is really surprising." Hearing this, Nie Tianchen frowned in confusion and said in a neither servile nor overbearing tone, "Please forgive me for being stupid. I don't understand what Grand Master means." Ji Tianqing didn't beat around the bush with him. He put away the sneer on his face and asked with a dignified expression, "Nie Tianchen. Let me ask you, where were you last night at 3:00 in the morning?" Only then did Nie Tianchen show a look of realization. He quickly answered, "So that's what you're talking about. Master, last night at 3:00 in the morning, I was meditating in the conference hall. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise outside, and there was also the sound of a fierce fight. I quickly ended my meditation and rushed to the Taoist hall to take a look. Only then did I find that many disciples and guards were alarmed. Later, I asked them and found out that someone had sneaked into the sect and caused trouble." Nie Tianchen answered very smoothly. His expression and tone were very natural, and it didn't seem like he was lying at all. Chapter 1932. Ji Tianqing's expression remained solemn as he stared at Nie Tianchen with a piercing gaze. Even though Nie Tianchen was able to answer his questions fluently, he did not give up. He continued to ask, "Who can testify for you?" Nie Tianchen looked up at Ji Tianqing and answered without hesitation, "The second elder, the fourth elder, and the guards who were on duty that night can testify for me." Ji Tianqing did not say anything. He turned to look at the Huanglong Daoist and signaled him with his eyes. The Huanglong Daoist immediately understood. He flashed to Nie Tianchen's side and reached out his hand to grab Nie Tianchen's shoulder. Nie Tianchen was shocked and instinctively stepped back. However, he was only a tribulation-passing martial monarch. How could he escape from the Huanglong Daoist's grasp? As soon as he took a step back, the Huanglong Daoist's big hand pressed down on his shoulder. He could not move at all. His body was frozen on the spot, and his face was filled with anxiety and fear. "Master, what are you doing? I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you doing this to me for no reason?" Nie Tianchen looked at the Huanglong Daoist and asked with grief and indignation. The Huanglong Daoist was still expressionless. A powerful surge of magic power gushed out of his palm and enveloped Nie Tianchen's body. Immediately, Nie Tianchen's magic power was sealed. His body was also enveloped by magic power. He could not struggle at all. Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Your master is worried about your health. He's just checking your injuries. Why are you so flustered? Nie Tianchen could not move his body, but he could still move his neck. He quickly shook his head and said angrily, I'm fine. I'm not injured at all. There's no need to check. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, that's not necessarily true. There was an invasion last night. Maybe you were unintentionally injured and you didn't even notice it. Nie Tianchen instantly realized what Nie Tian was trying to say. Growing even more anxious and nervous, he hastily explained, even though I was injured, it was because I fought against powerful enemies to protect our sect. However, I only suffered some light injuries and have long since recovered. There is no need for Grandmaster and Master to worry. Last night in the training hall, he was swept by the sword chi of the burial of heaven and was indeed slightly injured, leaving a wound on his back. However, after the incident, he used a secret technique and medicinal pills to heal his injuries, and his injuries had long been healed. Even the wound on his back had recovered to normal and could no longer be seen. He thought that Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist were not at Tianzhu Mountain, and no one saw him with their own eyes. He was hoping that he wouldn't be exposed, so he continued to stay in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Even when Huanglong Daoist came looking for him and told him that Ji Tianqing wanted to see him, he was not afraid. After all, he was very secretive and did not leave any traces behind. He was not afraid that Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist would investigate him. However, when he heard Ji Tianqing's words, he began to panic. As Ji Tianqing said, perhaps the sword of the burial of heaven had left some marks on his body that he did not even notice. At the thought of this, Nie Tianqing's heart was burning with anxiety, and fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Fortunately, Huanglong Daoist soon finished examining him and released him. However, Nie Tianqing did not dare to relax. He was secretly vigilant and quietly retreated. His right hand was hidden in his sleeve, secretly holding a white pearl the size of a date pit. He was ready to escape at any time. The white pearl was a life-saving item given to him by Lord Yi. Once it was activated, he could teleport hundreds of miles away. If Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist wanted to harm him, he would activate the pearl without hesitation and escape from Tianzhu Mountain. Of course, the pearl could only be used once. After that, it would dissolve and dissipate. He had to be very careful. Huanglong Daoist took a step back expressionlessly. He turned to look at Ji Tianqing and shook his head slightly. He seemed to be saying that he did not find anything unusual. Ji Tianqing frowned. A hint of confusion flashed in his eyes, but he did not say anything. Nie Tianqing stared at Ji Tianqing, waiting for his reaction. His nerves were stretched to the limit. The veins on his hand that was holding the white pearl were bulging, and his palms were sweating. It was only 2 breaths, but it felt as long as 2 months. Finally, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said calmly, since Grand Elder is so loyal to our sect, you may leave. To Nie Tianqing, his words were like music to his ears. Nie Tianqing's nerves immediately relaxed. His heart, which had been in his throat, also fell back into his stomach. He secretly let out a sigh of relief. His whole body seemed to have been drained of all strength. He quietly put away the white pearl and took a deep breath. Trying to keep his voice calm, he said, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Ji Tianqing nodded expressionlessly and said, go. Nie Tianqing clasped his hands and bowed. Then, he turned around and walked toward the door. Ji Tianqing's sharp eyes noticed that drops of cold sweat were flowing down Nie Tianqing's neck and back. This tiny detail caused the corners of his mouth to curl up into a sneer, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. At the same time, Huanglong Daoist, who had been silent all this time, suddenly raised his hands and grabbed at Nie Tianqing's back. His palms burst out with dazzling golden light, forming a giant golden palm that enveloped Nie Tianqing's body. Nie Tianqing was secretly relieved. He thought to himself, damn Ji Tianqing. His intuition is so sharp that he actually suspected me and confronted me face to face. Fortunately, I was quick-witted and answered without any flaws. That's why I was able to escape this disaster. It seems that I'll have to be more careful from now on. I can't let any flaws slip. He was distracted and did not guard against Huanglong Daoist's sudden attack. By the time he sensed danger approaching, it was already too late for him to dodge. Bam! With a muffled thump, the giant golden hand grabbed Nie Tianchen and held him in a tight grip. Nie Tianchen's expression changed drastically. He unleashed all of his magic power and struggled with all his might. However, the giant golden palm sealed his magic power, making him unable to move at all. He could only watch as Huanglong Daoist grabbed him with a cold smile on his face. He wanted to take out the white pearl from his space ring and teleport out of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. However, this was only an extravagant hope. His divine soul was imprisoned, and there was nothing he could do. Master, what are you doing? Frightened, he glared at Huanglong and asked. What's wrong? Huanglong Daoist sneered and said in a playful tone, don't you know what I'm doing? Tell me. I've treated you well. Why are you colluding with foreign enemies? Nie Tianchen widened his eyes in horror and quickly shook his head to deny it. No. Master, you must be mistaken. I've been loyal to you and the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. I've never colluded with foreign enemies. Chapter 1933. Black-robed martial sage? Nie Tianchen widened his eyes and stared at Huanglong in bewilderment, as if he had no idea what was going on. Black-robed martial sage? When I arrived at the Taoist sanctum last night, the fight had already ended. I only heard from others that there were black-robed men fighting in the Taoist sanctum. I don't know anything about the black-robed martial sage. Nie Tianchen defended himself with a serious expression, as if he really meant what he said. His expression, tone, and eyes did not seem to be lying. However, the Huanglong Daoist already knew the answer. He stared at Nie Tianchen coldly, his eyes full of mockery. Ha ha ha. Nie Tianchen, you have been in the Pillar of Heaven's mountain for hundreds of years. I have been guiding you and watching you grow up. I thought you were a trustworthy person. However, today, I realized I was wrong. I don't know the real you at all. I am amazed by your acting skills. Keep pretending. Keep pretending. Nie Tianchen looked at Daoist Huanglong with an aggrieved expression, as if he had suffered a great deal. Master, where did you get all this from? I have done nothing wrong. Why are you framing me? Ji Tianqing could not stand it anymore. He did not want to see Nie Tianchen's hypocritical face anymore. He asked directly, Nie Tianchen, you said that the fight had already ended when you arrived at the Taoist sanctum. You didn't see any black-robed men. You only heard about it from others. Let me ask you, why was the sword qi of the holy sword still in your body when you were injured last night? Nie Tianchen was stunned. A hint of panic flashed in his eyes. However, he remained calm. He pretended to be confused and asked, what? The sword qi of the holy sword? That's impossible. I was never injured. Ha ha ha. The sneer on Ji Tianqing's face deepened as he questioned, didn't you just say that you were slightly injured in order to protect our sect and that you've already recovered? How are you going to cover up your lie when you contradict yourself? Nie Tianchen was at a loss for words. His eyes darted around as he tried to think of a way to explain himself. Ji Tianqing continued, last night, the black-robed martial sage fought with the sacred sword and was repelled by the sacred sword before fleeing. There was also a black-clothed man who held the sect's medallion and brought the black-robed martial sage into the sect. Then, He followed the black-robed martial sage out of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. This person was a spy who colluded with foreign enemies. When the sacred sword had attacked the black-robed martial sage, the sword light had struck the spy, leaving behind sword qi in his body. "Nye Tianchen, do you have anything else to say?" With these words, Ji Tianqing's eyes were as sharp as swords, and his body burst forth with heaven-suppressing divine might that swept toward Nye Tianchen. Nye Tianqing's expression changed instantly. He hurriedly shook his head and explained, "No. That's impossible. I'm not a spy, and I don't have any sword qi in my body. If there really was the sword qi of the Saint Sword, how could I not know?" Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. Instead, he winked at the Huanglong Daoist. Huanglong Daoist raised his left hand and shot out a ray of blazing white light, which penetrated into Nye Tianqing's body. After the blazing white light entered the depths of Nye Tianqing's body, it dug out a strand of black sword qi that was as thin as a hair and slowly flew out. Huanglong Daoist held the strand of black sword qi in his left hand and stretched it toward Nye Tianqing. He said coldly, "Nye Tianqing, what else do you want to say?" Nye Tianqing's eyes widened as he stared at the strand of black sword qi. His whole body stiffened. His mind was blank. All the excuses he had prepared before were useless at this moment. He stared blankly at the strand of black sword qi and shook his head with a pale face. He murmured, "This is impossible, absolutely impossible." At this time, Ji Tianqing continued, "Nye Tianqing, you probably don't know how magical the sky spell that I set up personally is. Only disciples who are deacons and above can freely enter and exit the sky spell with their identity badges. The sky spell has a record of which badges have entered and exited the sky spell every day. Before you came to the main hall, I had already checked the record of last night's entry and exit. Unfortunately, you entered and exited the sky spell a total of 4 times last night." Hearing this, Nye Tianqing widened his eyes in horror. His face was full of disbelief and he was almost stunned. He couldn't believe that the sky spell had such an effect. Wasn't this too inconceivable? Ji Tianqing sneered and said slowly, "After checking your entry and exit records, I have already guessed what happened. Yesterday, after Huanglong and I left Tianzhu Mountain, you realized that your chance had come. So you contacted the black-robed martial sage and prepared to take action at night. Last night, you disguised yourself as a black-robed man and quietly left Tianzhu Mountain to meet the black-robed martial sage. Half an hour later, you took the black-robed martial sage through the sky spell and returned to Tianzhu Mountain to explore the sword steel in the middle of the dojo. The holy sword suddenly attacked the black-robed martial sage and caused a huge commotion. The black-robed martial sage was worried that the plan would be exposed, so he took you and left Tianzhu Mountain. 15 minutes later, the black-robed martial sage left and you secretly escaped to Tianzhu Mountain. Then, you resumed your identity as the Grand Elder and pretended that you had discovered something unusual and went to the dojo to meet everyone. After that, Ji Tianqing stared at Nye Tianqing and asked with a cold smile, "What do you think? Am I right?" Nye Tianqing was already dumbfounded. He stared at Su Kei in horror and pursed his lips without saying a word. Apparently, Ji Tianqing's deduction was completely correct and matched the facts. Nye Tianqing could no longer refute this. He was in complete despair. Knowing that his identity had been exposed, he stopped pretending. He. Ha 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 ha, Nye Tianqing sneered in a low voice. Then, he raised his head and laughed wildly. As expected of the descendant of Kenshin. You have such a brilliant method. I have always been cautious and I have not been discovered for hundreds of years. I didn't expect you to see through me in the end. Since you can come back alive, it means that the plan of the Grand Elder has failed. Nye Tianqing stared at Ji Tianqing ferociously and sneered, "But don't be too proud of yourself. The Grand Elder has never failed to do anything he wants to do. You are lucky to come back alive. But next time, you will not be so lucky. You will definitely die. Tianzhu Mountain will be razed to the ground. Ji Tianqing was not angry. He looked at Nia Tianchen expressionlessly and asked, I am very confused. You have joined Tianzhu Mountain for hundreds of years and lived here for a few decades. Huang Long is your master and he taught you a unique skill and taught you how to cultivate. Even if you are a stubborn rock, you should have feelings. Why are you so heartless and willing to be the enemy's lackey to destroy Tianzhu Mountain, your own people and your master? Nia Tianchen knew that he was going to die, so he did not hide anything. He sneered and said, hee hee. Before I joined Tianzhu Mountain, I was a powerful man with a wife and a family. If I didn't follow orders, my life and my family would be in danger. However, I was ordered to join Tianzhu Mountain as a spy. That way, I could protect my wife and my family and help my descendants to achieve great things. Chapter 1934. Apparently, Nia Tianchen had no choice but to submit to the black-robed martial sage's threats and promises. Huanglong Daoist frowned and sneered, Nia Tianchen, this is not what you said when you entered the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and became my disciple. You said that your parents died and your family was wiped out by a powerful enemy. You escaped alone and had nowhere to go. Nia Tianchen glanced at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, of course, I lied to you. Everyone knows that you are a kind person. If I didn't use some tricks, how could I trick you into trusting me? Huang Long's face was filled with anger as he cursed, you bastard. Nia Tianchen showed no remorse. He sneered and said, now that things have come to this, it's useless to say anything more. You don't have to waste your breath. I will never betray that lord. If you want to kill me or torture me, just do it. He acted like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water, which made Huanglong Daoist tremble with anger. However, Ji Tianqing didn't seem angry at all. Instead, he said with a grim face, Nia Tianchen, do you think that you'll be able to keep your secret and protect your family by dying? Ha ha ha. You are too naive. You don't understand my methods at all. Sometimes, death is not scary. It is scary to live a life worse than death. As he spoke, he waved his hand and a silver divine star fire flew toward Nia Tianchen. Seeing the divine star fire flying toward him, Nia Tianchen was not afraid at all. Instead, he sneered. Ha, you are just extorting a confession by torture. I knew this day would come. Do you think I will be afraid of you? Just as he finished speaking, the ball of star divine fire hit him. Boom! The divine star fire immediately spread out and covered Nia Tianchen's body like a layer of silver sand. Then, the divine star fire exploded with a violent power and started to burn Nia Tianchen's body. His robes and hair were quickly burned to ashes and scattered on the ground. His skin was also burned black by the divine star fire. It dried up and curled up, with black smoke rising from it. In the blink of an eye, his skin was burned to ashes. The extreme pain caused his entire body to twitch as he gritted his teeth and growled. Ji Tianqing was not moved at all. He controlled the star divine fire to continue burning his flesh. Immediately afterwards, Nia Tianchen's flesh and blood also turned black. Like a piece of coal, his flesh and blood began to crack and shatter, leaving behind a cloud of black ash. His body was curled up like a shrimp, and his originally tall body had turned into a lump of black charcoal. One could barely make out the shape of a human. However, the burning speed of the star divine fire was very slow. Only after a full 100 breaths of time did Nia Tianchen's fleshly body turn into black ashes. During this process, indescribable pain and torment constantly invaded his soul. This kind of torture was even more painful than being hacked into pieces. It was definitely not something an ordinary person could endure. Nie Tianqian gritted his teeth and let out agonized screams. However, he refused to beg for mercy. Finally, Nie Tianqian's flesh and skin were burned to a crisp. All that was left of him was a pitch-black skeleton. However, he still had a breath of life, and didn't die on the spot. Then, Ji Tianqing controlled the star divine fire to burn his bones and meridians. The star divine fire rose fiercely and wrapped around his body tightly, giving rise to sizzling sounds and wisps of black smoke. Nie Tianqian fell to the ground and struggled in pain. He rolled over and over, letting out ear-piercing screams. However, since the bones were the hardest part of the fleshly body, Ji Tianqing deliberately controlled the star divine fire to slow down the burning speed. According to the current situation, it would take the star divine fire at least a quarter of an hour to burn his bones to ashes. In other words, Nie Tianqian would have to suffer for another quarter of an hour. Seeing him like this, Huanglong Daoist couldn't help but shout, Nie Tianqian. You evil creature, are you still not willing to beg for mercy? You would rather be burned to ashes than reveal the identity of the black-robed martial sage. As Nie Tianqian ran back and forth in the hall, he called out in a low voice, Ji Tianqing. If you have the guts, kill me and give me a quick death. You have underestimated my willpower. No matter how you torture me, I will never beg for mercy. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with a cold smile, Do you want to die? I'm sorry, but in front of me, your life is not up to you. I won't kill you. On the contrary, I will let you live forever. Every day and night, you will be burned and tortured by the star divine fire, and you will struggle in endless pain. This is the punishment for a traitor. With these words, Ji Tianqing waved his right hand in the air, manipulating the cluster of divine flame in different ways to torture Nie Tianqian. Nie Tianqian's willpower was indeed strong. Half of his bones had been burned to ashes, but he still refused to speak. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry. He continued to torture him with the star divine fire. Before they knew it, a quarter of an hour had passed. Nie Tianqian's bones had all been burned to ashes. Even his skull and teeth, which were the hardest part of his body, had been burned to ashes. His body had been completely destroyed. Only his divine soul was left, which was still wrapped in the star divine fire. At this moment, Nie Tianqian had been tortured to the point of mental breakdown. His divine soul had been severely injured, and his consciousness had become blurry. He could not hold on any longer. Stop. Stop it. Ji Tianqing. I'll tell you everything. Stop. Nie Tianqian's divine soul was fluctuating, and he let out a miserable wail. Finally, he began to beg for mercy. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said indifferently, Aren't you a man of integrity? Why don't you keep your mouth shut? I have just started to torture you, and you are already begging for mercy. How boring. Nie Tianqian was rendered speechless by Su Kei's sarcasm. He felt extremely humiliated and indignant. Of course, compared to the pain he was suffering, this humiliation was nothing. Don't you want to know the identity of the black-robed martial saint? I can tell you, but you have to promise me one thing. Nie Tianqian's divine soul was flickering with white light. His strength was getting weaker and weaker, but he was still struggling. Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing interrupted him and said contemptuously, Do you think you are qualified to negotiate with me? Do you think you are qualified? I already know the identity of the black-robed martial saint. You are useless now. Now, I will suppress you in the star divine furnace and let you be roasted by the divine fire for 1,000 years. I will let you die in endless pain. After saying that, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and a golden palm shadow appeared, which grabbed at Nie Tianqian's divine soul. Nie Tianqian was dumbfounded. He had never thought that Ji Tianqing would torture him so cruelly even though he already knew the answer. The humiliation of being toyed with, as well as the anger of being toyed with, instantly exploded in his soul, making him go mad with rage. Ah! Ji Tianqing! You despicable bastard, you will die a horrible death. Nie Tianqian roared at the top of his lungs. Chapter 1935. The giant golden hand flew back to Ji Tianqing with Nie Tianqian's divine soul in its hand. Ji Tianqing held the divine soul in his right hand and began to search Nie Tianqian's soul and memory with the soul-searching secret method. Huanglong Daoist didn't expect that things would turn out like this. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was holding Nie Tianqian's divine soul in silence, he couldn't help but ask, "Master, Nie Tianqian has begged for mercy. Why don't you listen to his answer? Do you really know the identity of the black-robed martial sage?" Ji Tianqing closed his eyes and said expressionlessly, "I just guessed the answer. I can't be sure." Huanglong Daoist was even more confused. He asked, "Then why don't you let him tell you the answer?" Ji Tianqing said, "Although Nie Tianqian begged for mercy, he still wants to try his luck. He wants to negotiate with me. Isn't that wishful thinking? I don't need him to tell me the answer. I can use the soul-searching secret method to directly search his soul and memory. Then I will know the truth." Huanglong Daoist frowned slightly and asked tentatively, "Soul-searching secret method? Since Master has mastered such a wonderful technique, why don't you use it earlier? Why waste time with him?" Ji Tianqing explained calmly, "My divine soul is only in the tribulation realm. I can't use the soul-searching secret method on Nie Tianqian directly. First, I use the star divine fire to torture him and break his will. Then, I will severely injure his divine soul. Only then can I successfully search his soul and memory." After hearing this, Huanglong Daoist suddenly understood. He quickly cupped his hands and said, "I see. Master, you are really good. As the saying goes, when the devil is 1 foot tall, the Tao is 10 feet tall. Nie Tianqian is still too inexperienced to play tricks in front of Master." Then, he asked again, "Master, what are you going to do with Nie Tianqian after you find out the truth?" Ji Tianqing said coldly, "Imprison him in the star divine furnace until his divine soul is burned out by the star divine fire." Huanglong Daoist thought for a moment and said tentatively, "Shizuan, this disciple has an immature suggestion. Why don't you use a secret technique to control his soul and send a message to the black-robed martial sage? After that, we will set up traps and ambushes. It is very likely that we will be able to capture that black-robed martial saint. At that time, even if we can't kill him, we can still severely injure him." Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then shook his head lightly and said, "If it were someone else, this would be a good plan." However, the black-robed martial saint was the commander of the immortal guards of the Tianju divine nation. He was martial god Tianju's trusted subordinate. This person had always been sinister and cunning, and was extremely difficult to deal with. We've already fought him, so I doubt he'll take the bait even if we use Nie Tianqian's name to send him a message. So, don't waste your energy." Huanglong Daoist's face was filled with shock, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. "What? The black-robed martial saint who attacked us turned out to be the Heaven and Divine Nations commander of the Divine Guards. Yi Lushui? How could it be him? He is martial god Tianju's right-hand man, a martial saint expert who leads the Divine Guards. He has always been elusive." Huanglong Daoist was inexplicably shocked. He could not accept this answer, nor could he believe this result. What's more, the pillar of Heaven's mountains has already withered to this point. How could he deliberately plot against us? Nie Tianqian has been in our sect for hundreds of years. Doesn't that mean that Yi Lushui has been targeting us for hundreds of years? Ji Tianqing finished casting the spell and slowly opened his eyes. He had already searched Nie Tianqian's soul memory and obtained the exact answer. Seeing that Huanglong Daoist was unwilling to believe it, he said calmly, "When I first returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, you told me that there were many powerful forces that were targeting our sect other than the North Underworld Mountain. Among them, the most hidden and most powerful force had never been found out who it was. Now the truth is out. That force is the Heaven and Divine Nation." He raised his head to look outside the hall and said leisurely, "In the past, Martial God Tai Hao and Martial God Luo Shui were indebted to me and respected me greatly. They would definitely not target the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Only Martial God Tian Ju is arrogant and he is hostile to me. Today, the three martial gods might not be attached to worldly power and wealth anymore. Their biggest wish and goal is to leave this world and ascend to the upper world to pursue the divine Tao of immortality." Huanglong Daoist immediately understood what he meant and said, "Martial God Tian Ju wants to know the mystery of Master's ascension. That's why he targeted the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. He was a supreme martial god. Due to his status and face, he could not personally deal with the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Moreover, he was worried that Martial God Tai Hao and Martial God Luo Shui would join hands to stop him. Therefore, he gave this task to his trusted subordinate, Yi Lu Shui. That's why Yi Lu Shui sneaked into our sect to investigate the sword steal in the dojo. After the matter was exposed, he fled the Pillar of Heaven's mountains without hesitation." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's right. Your guess is not far from the truth. Yi Lu Shui came for the mystery of Master's ascension. As for whether he planned it himself or was instructed by Martial God Tian Ju, that's unknown." Daoist Huanglong furrowed his brows tightly, his expression turning solemn. "Since the black-robed martial saint is Yi Lu Shui, then we are in trouble. North Underworld Mountain wants to kill us and Heaven and Divine Nation is also targeting us. Our sect situation is worrying." There was something he did not say out loud. With the current strength of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, they could not even resist the North Underworld Mountain. How could they be qualified to deal with the Heaven and Divine Nation? Ji Tianqing was not worried and said calmly, "Don't worry. Today, we fought with Yi Lu Shui and alerted the enemy. This guy is cautious and will not act rashly in the short term. Next, we only need to deal with the North Underworld Mountain with all our strength." Huanglong Daoist was relieved and said, "Disciple will follow Master's instructions." Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said, "Master will go into seclusion for a few days. Next, you have a lot of things to do. First, appease the disciples and double the cultivation resources so that everyone can improve their strength as soon as possible. In addition, you have to reorganize the 9 sects and 18 schools and establish a cooperative defense system. Let the sects strengthen their vigilance. Once they find a demon in the territory, they have to join forces to encircle and suppress it. No matter which sect or city you are from, as long as you can kill a demon, I will reward you according to your contribution. If anyone can kill a demon monarch, I will reward them with 5 million spirit stones and a supreme-grade tribulation-level cultivation technique. If someone can make a greater contribution, I will not only reward him with cultivation resources, but also personally guide him in martial arts." Hearing what he said, Huanglong Daoist suddenly exclaimed, "Master, isn't it too generous of you to reward people according to their contribution?" Ji Tianqing said with a serious face, "In this chaotic world, we must use extreme means to see the effect. With great rewards, there will be brave men." Huanglong Daoist hesitated and asked, "Master is a god and has the world's martial arts hidden in your heart. Rewarding cultivation methods is nothing. But our sect does not have many cultivation resources. How can we give out rewards?" You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.